Hi, I'm Marsh from StrataGames, and today I'm joined by Peter, and we are commentating a couple matches that happened at the Win a Duel event that I went to recently at Cards on 6th in Lancaster, Ohio, just a little bit outside of Columbus. And so we went to this event. It was pretty sweet. We recorded all of my matches throughout the event. And so currently in this video, unless we break it up or anything, we'll be commentating all of the Swiss matches that we did. There were 5 rounds of Swiss, cut to top 8. And so here I am shuffling up with my first round opponent.
Sounds good. And if I recall, this is the Rainbow Black Sack deck.
Yes, indeed. So we have, I don't know exactly when this video is going to go up, but there will probably already be a tournament report on the overall tournament, so you can know how I did. Spoilers, I did pretty well. And then also we have a familiar podcast episode out that was all about brewing the deck, which is Black Sack with a rainbow sideboard through Treasure Makers. And so we'll certainly be talking about that more throughout. But yeah, it was first time taking this brew. I mean, this brew is only a couple weeks old, to be honest, and first time taking it to a bigger tournament like this. So pretty excited.
Yeah. Good. All right. What deck do you play up against this first time?
Looks like... so we are against Slivers, which we'll find out pretty quickly here. The guy, nice guy that I played against here, he said he's mostly a modern, pre-modern, and old school player, things like that. But decided to come out for the Win a Duel and had the Slivers deck from like 5 years ago that he barely had to update for the event, which was cool. I believe we both took a mulligan here, but I'm starting immediately with the new tech of Greedy Freebooter.
Cool. This, I mean, you have to feel good about these creature type matchups, right?
Yeah, Slivers definitely has the potential to really catch you off guard if you get into the mid game. If you're turn 4 or 5, and if they have the right draw and everything, they could definitely get to the point where they overwhelm you. But I'm usually going way faster than that. I'm the one overwhelming them way before. So I did keep a 1-lander here. We were on a mulligan, but also I love keeping my 1-landers. So I Village Rights the Greedy Freebooter, which gives us a scry and a treasure. So I actually scry a Nezumi Linkbreaker, I think, to the bottom. And because of that scry, I end up finding my swamp for the turn, which I wouldn't have otherwise, because it was the bottom of the 2 cards I drew. And this allowed me to just, now that I know I'm against Slivers, that means probably no removal in the main deck. I can just go, pedal to the metal. So I slam both a Carrion Feeder and a Beetle using that treasure immediately.
Yeah. That makes sense. And you're willing to sack that treasure pretty early versus trying to save it for a sideboard card, which I guess probably makes sense just because you need to get on the board as quick as you can against the Slivers deck.
Yeah, well, I mean, and since it's game 1, I do have 2 red cards in the main deck, but it's not going to be as many as if I, once I maybe bring in some more sideboard cards. So I don't currently have any red cards in hand. I'm probably only going to draw maybe 5 cards throughout the entire game, barring any other Village Rights, assuming things go my way and I kill pretty quickly. So I just don't have time to like sit around and wait for a red spell and hold that treasure. Right. And yeah, I mean, they're deploying Slivers. They have a Gemhide Sliver here, which gives their Slivers all the ability to tap 4 mana, basically turn them into Birds of Paradise. And then one of their many +1/+1 Slivers that grows their team. So they're already getting to the point where they could have, they have 6 mana on board because all their guys tap. They could play like 3 more guys that buffs their whole team. They could get really scary really quickly. And so I need to apply pressure as quickly as possible here.
Right. Yeah. Their board's already all 2/2s. But luckily your board is 5/5.
Yes. 4/4s. Yeah. So I opt to Linkbreaker, sack it right away, unearth it, sack it right away, and then keep the Mercenaries here. I could go all in, but first of all, I want to have some chump blockers in case they make a really big board here. And also Mercenaries, there's often a difficulty in Black Sack of I'm going to pause here real quick because I know what happens next. There's this thing in Black Sack that you always want to figure out, do you want to sack a creature now or next turn? Because if you sack it now, you get 1 more damage in. or 2 or 3 or however much. But mercenaries kind of bridge that gap, because if you sack a mercenary, you get +1 power now, but then you lose the ability to pump your creature next turn. So
Mm-hmm.
by not sacrificing the mercenaries, you're usually getting the same amount of power roughly. And of course, if you have like a nested shambler, pumping those on the shambler actually makes it so you get more power in the long run.
Yeah.
So that's why I opted to save him here. And so he just cast a Lead the Stampede. And Peter, you had some experience with this.
Yeah.
It entirely whiffed. He did not find a single creature off of it.
Yes. At the winter duel, I was playing elves, and it was actually in the same match I missed twice, and it was pretty soul crushing.
I've never seen so many Lead the Stampedes put 5 cards on the bottom before as in this match, or this table, because Peter was directly next to me, which was crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So pretty unfortunate. Honestly, I thought that if he got like 3-ish creatures from this match, or from the Lead the Stampede, things could be pretty even depending on what creatures he got. Once he put them all on bottom, he only had 1 more creature to play, which was another one of the ones that buffed him. So he's got a bunch of 3/3s, but he's at 11. I have on board the ability to force him to chump with the guy he just played. And so I just took the 6 damage. I know I'm going to put his guys back into being 2/2s here. And even if he draws another one, like I can't even imagine what he can do here.
Yeah. Once you kind of get slivers on the back foot, it's really hard for them to recover.
Exactly. So I play an Accursed Marauder here pre-combat, because it's going to pump the Beetle. I know he's going to sack a tapped creature, but it's just some more damage to get through. And since I also force him to chump here, because we currently have 10 damage coming in, and of course the mercenaries can make it up to 14, he's forced to block. In fact, I believe I tapped both the mercenaries to pump the Carried Feeder, so they're both currently dealing 6 damage, which is why he chumped that one. It didn't really matter. But yeah, he definitely needs like a Terminus to get out of this one, and don't think that's going to be coming through anytime soon.
Yeah, it's sad. It's like obviously we want you to do well and you to win, but when there's a sliver stack, you got to root for the slivers a little bit.
I'm always rooting for any of the brews, or even, this is a kind of a tried and true deck, but it's tier 3 or fringe or wherever you want to call it. I'm always rooting for him, but Black Sack isn't a tier 1 deck either, so that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
He attacks in for a little bit. He does have another, it's a Muscle Sliver, I believe. And so again, guys are pumped to 3/3s, but now I know he has to chump both of my big guys. So I'm able to pump 1 mercenary with the other one, attack in for that, because I know that can't get blocked. So he takes 2 damage anyway. Play a Bloodthorn Vampire. I got 3 lethal attackers. This game's pretty much over.
Yeah, I appreciate them sticking it out though.
Yeah, definitely had the spirit to see if he could draw anything.
Yeah.
But
yeah, that's it. So game 1, really a dominating game, I think, for Mono Black Sack. Again, the Lead the Stampede really.
It would be a very different game if he got, say, 2 more pumping slivers and, I don't know, the haste sliver or provoke or flanking or anything like that. That gave him some extra utility would be a big game here. So of course we go to sideboard here, and unfortunately, not really a match where I need my rainbow sideboard. All I want from my sideboard is snuff outs here, and maybe I think I saw I was toying around with the Temur Battle Rage I could put in, but snuff out, kill your opponent's creature, reduce their creatures at instant speed, can blow out like a block and stuff like that. That's really all I want to be doing.
Yeah, and it looks like your opponent is looking to put in 2 black cards, which I think I'm trying to remember what that sliver is.
I believe it's Cryptid Sliver, which allows all slivers to tap to regenerate target sliver.
Which I could see being powerful if you're because you're definitely bringing in at least your removal.
Cryptid Sliver? Cryptic Sliver? What kind of sliver is it?
If I recall correctly, what is your removal suite in this deck?
Yeah, so real quick, so that is Crypt Sliver. I was adding some suffixes there that weren't needed, which is all slivers have tap regenerate target sliver. So while that's not going to be useful against the snuff outs I'm bringing in, because snuff out specifically says a line that people forget, this creature can't be regenerated, but it is going to help with all of the chump blocking that he has to do. If every single creature can chump block and just tap to keep itself alive or keep another creature alive, that'll do wonders for him for sure. As far as the removal suite, I actually cut it down quite a bit because of the addition of the rainbow sideboard. Usually I'm on, well, we are on 4 Shambling Ghast here, so I can do -1/-1 to a creature. Unfortunately, almost every single sliver is like 1/1 and then buffs themselves or their whole team. Like there are some 1/1s, but usually they're already going to be buffed. So that might not come into play a ton. And I have 2 Accursed Marauders in the main deck, and then I have the 4 Snuff Outs in the sideboard. Usually in the stock Black Sack list, I'm playing somewhere between 6 and 8 Snuff Out / Tragic Slips.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've cut the Tragic Slips entirely in order to make room for the rainbow sideboard. And this is a match where that I could feel that a little bit, but again, I'm not too worried about the match, to be honest.
Right, and the opponent's running a plated sliver as well. That adds that extra piece of toughness.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
did
Just
not
a
see them bring in winged sliver, which is surprising to me.
Yeah, I would assume that he kind of felt like he was based on game 1, he was on the back foot, and
Mm-hmm.
so the flying, which is it doesn't really matter as far as blocking, but it's obviously good for attacking, and so maybe just felt like he needed to survive here. I will say, getting a look at my hand, I kept one of the best 7s I can keep, which was 3 swamps, which is maybe 1 swamp more than you usually want, but I have Mortician Beetle, Bloodthorn Vampire, Nested Shambler, and Supernatural Stamina, which
Mm-hmm.
is just an incredible combination of cards. And then I top deck a Snuff Out, which I probably would have asked for if I had to name one card in my deck. So things are already going pretty well here.
Yeah.
They start with a Sinew Sliver, I believe, just another one of the +1/+1 guys.
Mm-hmm.
I have the ability to go for an attack with the Shambler here and probably get in for 1 damage. But if he blocks, I'm forced to do the Supernatural Stamina trick, which isn't bad because I can play the Beetle, and obviously I trade up here. But I really wanted the Vampire down because with the right draw, maybe another Stamina or something, I could literally have lethal next turn.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's no reason to chance the fact that he calls my
Right.
bluff and slows me down a little bit there.
There was a nice hit with that Winding Way. That's how it's supposed to go.
Yeah, that Winding Way hit 3 creatures, I believe, been to planes.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Draw 3 for 2, pretty good. Draw
Mhm.
0 for 3, pretty bad.
Right. And so now that's a plated sliver buffing up the toughness, as well as I saw a muscle sliver get picked up as well. So that'll pump the whole team on the following turn as well.
Yeah. So currently the creatures are 2 3s. I drop down a Beetle and a Freebooter here, and I of course have that Stamina. He does decide to go for a block on the Shambler, and I get the Stamina trick on him. His creature's a 2/3, so they're going to trade. I think that this might have been his first time playing against Black Sack. Like I said, he had this deck from like 5 years before, and so I don't think he was necessarily anticipating the Stamina. I don't think we saw that last game.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I get a pretty good trade on him there, and then I just have this enormous board with the Beetle and the Vampire, not to mention the Snuff Out.
Yeah, that's tough to come back from, even with those additions that they picked up that last turn. It's going to be tough to come back, especially at this point. Bloodthorn Vampire is going to be able to start representing lethal every turn and being forced to chump.
Forces a chump block every turn. Yeah. It's a little hard to read here, but he does put out a dice that says 2/3, which is representing how much buff his creatures are getting, because now he has 2 +1/+1 slivers as well as the +0/+1. So they're all 3/4s.
Yeah.
I play a Shambling Ghast here.
Yep, I heard him say it was a repurposed Tarmogoyf dice, which I appreciate.
Yeah. I thought it was pretty cool because, like, if you just have all +1/+1 slivers, you can't use it. But once you have the plus toughness one, I opt to just snuff out one of the growers beforehand, just because it's a free block on one of our guys, and he's already pretty much priced into chumping the Vampire here. Because while it might not itself be able to be lethal, the fact that the Beetle will be growing with it will definitely be lethal here, because I have, what is this, 7 sack creatures, 7 sackable creatures, so that would be 15 damage on the Vampire, 8 damage on the Beetle, and so I figured force him to lose 2 here and eat fewer squirrels, take more damage.
Yeah.
So he blocks with the plated sliver on the Vampire and the sinew sliver on the Shambler. I go ahead and sack the Shambler since it's going to die anyway. To the Vampire. Grow the Beetle here. And I end up dealing, what is this, 6 damage, I think. It goes down to 13. And reduced once again to just a single creature on board. Mine
Yeah.
looking a little more impressive.
Yeah, at this point, back-to-back muscle slivers are probably necessary, or just general +1/+1 buffing slivers. But at this point, even that is just it's hard to come back from because they're chumping every round.
Yeah, he doesn't have the colored mana, unfortunately. He only has green and white, and a lot of these sliver decks play. We just see right there at the top a thriving land to be able to splash the red and the black and stuff we've seen. I think he really needs a crypt sliver to be able to have a shot. Like, he needs to be able to chump block and not lose his guys.
Mm-hmm.
Because even if he makes them all 5/5s, I can still make him chump 2 of them with like a vampire and a beetle every turn. I
Yeah.
guess he could take a beetle hit once, maybe. But we're approaching the point where beetle's lethal as well. So he does lead the Stampede, hits 3 creatures.
And they're not bad hits. It's nice picking up those 1-drops, especially, so you can kind of flood the board a little bit. And I believe those are the 1-drops that give flanking, which will, upon a creature blocking them, gives it -1/-1, which isn't as helpful here, but can be helpful.
Yeah, unfortunately on the back foot, not quite as good. And the 1-drops are good, but since he they're all white 1-drops, he can only play one of them. So he opts instead to play the Sentinel Sliver, I think it is. It gives Vigilance. That's a 2/2. I go to my upkeep here, and I actually sack the Greedy Freebooter to scry in the upkeep, which is a trick that I found was very helpful throughout the tournament. Was that, like, I really don't want to draw a swamp here. I'm already going to be sacking something this turn to grow my guy. Might as well just do this. And so we end up drawing a Carrion Feeder here, and I just jam with the team. And I know I make a mistake just coming up here, but I'm realizing I might have made 2. So that'll be fun to get to. Because the vampire is currently a 3/3 because I sacked the freebooter in the upkeep. And I think I forgot that I sacked that because
you sacked something else.
Yeah, so he's going to block with the vampire with the Sentinel Sliver. I'm so used to every sliver being a 1/1 and they get buffs that it totally blanked, didn't cross my mind that this is a 2/2 with a +1/+1 buff. So I sack a squirrel to make my vampire a 3/3, trying to get past his 2/2, and I say, okay, go to damage. First of all, his creature's a 3/3, so ours would trade, but also my vampire is a 5/5. So, so this is a big mistake for me. So I already said past priority, so I'm not gonna have the opportunity, nor would I want to go back and say I can now sack another creature. However, my creature was a 5/5, so it shouldn't have died in the first place, and I just missed that. I do panic a little bit, like, oh, maybe this is my way to give him the game back. But I also still, he's at 5. I have a beetle and a feeder, which could be lethal. I have 4 1/1s on board, so I'm still not feeling too bad. But certainly a mistake that I shouldn't have made.
Right. Benevolent Bodyguard. That is a 1/1 that can sack to give something protection from a color, which can be really useful against removal spells.
Removal and chump blocking, because of course you can chump with it and then block with another creature and then give the other creature protection, and you're only going to lose 1. And for that exact reason, I decided to sack the Shamlagast on the end step here to pick off the Benevolent Bodyguard, so that if he sacks it, if I did this on my turn, he could sack it to give one of his creatures pro black. He'd get a free block off, and I know I'm going to want to kill that anyway. So we draw a Supernatural Stamina here, my other card being a Swamp.
Which is the nail in the coffin.
Yeah, so I do swing here. I mentioned afterwards, he has 2 forests up, and so clearly he has to block the Carrion Feeder and the Beetle. Stamina, adding 2 power to a squirrel would be 5 damage. But I do hesitate for a second because I'm like, what are the chances he's playing something weird like a fog? He could have a green removal spell that deals damage at instant speed. And so I don't love using the stamina on the squirrel necessarily, because there is that possibility. But I also figure if he does have a removal spell for that, then I get to just sack that squirrel and I think another squirrel to keep my my feeder alive, and then I still just eat his 2 creatures. So what am I really losing from this?
Yeah, because they're gonna have to basically remove your creature before combat damage is dealt. So you'll still have an opportunity to do the sack, and it's a really important way when you're playing Magic, is to let your opponent put them into a position where they have to make a decision before you have to make a decision. You don't want to be jumping to make the choice when you can force them to make a choice before you have to.
Exactly. That's a big thing with any combat deck, but especially like Black Sack, is that like if you have lethal on board or they block in a way where you already have lethal, don't start sacking stuff, because you might use up resources that maybe they then get you with a cast down. They get priority after you do
Mm-hmm.
in the blocker step before damage is dealt. So no matter what you do, they will always be able to respond. So if you already got lethal, just pass priority and then wait for them to do something, because maybe you just win the game, or if they do something, you at least have full information at that point.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's match one,
Great.
taken down against Slivers. I just wanted to give a quick shout out to the store that we were able to record these matches at, which was Cards on 6th in Lancaster, Ohio, just a little bit outside of Columbus. Thanks a lot to John, the tournament organizer, for helping us with a lot of the setup and facilitating all of the production and things like that. And Brian, the store owner, for letting us do this in the first place. It was really cool, and we hope to be able to do it again in the future.
Thanks to Card Market for sponsoring this video.
All right, so this is round 2. And we're now 1-0, and we're up against Spy Combo, which is always a fun match as Black Sack. We're usually in a little bit of a race here, but especially because we're starting on the play, if we can get our plan going before they can, we're usually able to beat them to the punch.
Right. Yeah. So at this point, it's probably just like ships passing in the sea. You're both trying to do your thing. You're both trying to make it happen, because they're not really likely to be running a removal suite, and they're definitely not trying to run their mid-range strategy, because it's just going to fail against you. Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see who wins this race.
Yeah, for sure. So we start straight away with the Greedy Freebooter again. I have both a Carrion Feeder and a Mortician Beetle in hand that I could have led with. I almost had a feeling like before the game that I should lead with the Carrion Feeder and go for the speed. Maybe it was just how my opponent looked. They looked like the spy player. But I decided to play the safe way, because if they just bolted my feeder, I'd be in some trouble. I do have an Unearth in hand, so if they did kill it, like maybe that was part of it, that like I could always get it back.
Yeah.
But anyway, they go for a land grant, or forest land grant. They get a Caretaker down and a Lotus Petal here. And you always go for the bluff attack, because sometimes it just works and you get 1 damage in for free.
Right. I mean, even if you had the Stamina there, would you use it?
I wouldn't probably. That's a great question. I probably wouldn't use it here on the Caretaker, because it's not necessarily contributing that much to their game plan at the moment. My other creatures are going to be bigger than them.
Mm-hmm.
And if it was like their only, if they had Forest and a Caretaker and maybe like a Elves or something they were going to play that would then turn on this Caretaker for a 2nd mana, I might do it then. If this freebooter was instead like a Nested Shambler, I absolutely would do it, because I'd kill their guy and then I'd play the Carrion Feeder, sack it, get all my squirrels. But I don't feel like the double freebooter value is worth it, and the Caretaker probably isn't worth killing here. But It's a good question for sure.
Okay. And so the magic number for this spy player, I'm not sure if they're running 4 or 5 lands, but at this point, they have the mana that they need to win, especially now that they just revealed a spy. So now it's just a matter of them getting all the lands in their hand and have 3 creatures out to win the game.
Yeah, so they're able to land the Wall of Roots and then use the mana from that and the Caretaker. This could be a reason to have killed it, to Winding Way. They also then cracked the Lotus Petal for the Sagu Wildling Roost-Seek, which is a little aggressive, because your Lotus Petal's, it's a treasure. If you don't use it now, you'll still have it next turn. There could have been a fear of like drawing a swamp here, or a land. Not even a fear, but just if they drew one of their lands, maybe they didn't want that to be a possibility. So yeah. We're definitely going to have to make sure they don't have creatures for that, or, kill them fast enough to be able to combo next turn, because they can pull out their last swamp.
Right.
We do go for another sack on the freebooter in the upkeep here, and I find a Supernatural Stamina. And this is when things are looking pretty good, because last turn I drew in a Cursed Marauder. And so here we get to play a Marauder and immediately stamina it. To do exactly what we were just talking about, kill off both of their creatures, and also grow my beetle 4 counters in the meantime.
Yeah, Yeah, see, that's tough. I mean, because they potentially had lethal the next turn, so that was very necessary there to turn it around. Again, assuming they're running the 4 land version, but even with the 5 land, they might have had enough.
Not quite sure, but they were in fact on the four land version. Obviously, at this point, I don't know, but I always expect 4 land is 95% of the decks that you come up against. So maybe every once in a while you get caught off guard by a 5 land, but I always expect 4.
Yep.
But yeah, so the Marauder, usually in my experience, 1 removal spell is good enough to slow them down enough that they'll have to start chump blocking, because we can see they're at 11. I have 8 damage on board. All I need is 2 more creatures to sacrifice to be able to force them to chump block.
Yep.
And
they just threw out the chump blocking Hydra.
Yep. They got Aquarian Ranger for maybe an extra mana next turn or something, or as a creature. And then, the chump blocking Hydra. They go for, I get a freebooter here and then have the Unearth for the Marauder. So I'm able to eat one of their creatures, grow 2 here, and then force the chump block as well, because we currently have 10 damage. And we were just talking about this. I attack here for 10. They say, how much damage is it? I say it is currently 10 damage. And then they say, I will take 10, meaning no blocks. So I say, I'll sack the Marauder and I'll deal you 12. So I made it clear that, I was going to be dealing more damage. If they had chump blocked with the Aquarian Ranger, I don't think they were getting out of that anyway. So it didn't really make a difference. While it technically was a mistake on their part, the game would have been the same regardless. It would have just lasted another turn cycle.
Yeah. Though I don't know if it's even a mistake on their part, because I don't think they can come back without that creature. Their only hope is that creature survives and you make a mistake. Which
I guess that's totally fair. Like, my opinion was, it's a mistake because, I have lethal on board. But you're right. I could have made a mistake, not sacrificed it, and maybe, they needed it desperately enough.
Yeah. Sadly, sometimes the only path to victory is your opponent making a mistake.
Yeah, and absolutely in those situations, you should do everything in your power to make sure they do make that mistake. So I've been there too.
All right. So your sideboard suite, what do you bring in here?
Yeah, so once again, we're against a deck that doesn't play instants, so Dispel's bad. They don't play removal of any kind, so we don't need Mask of Law and Grace. They're not red, so we don't need Blue Elemental Blast. And they're not running Fog, so we don't need Flaring Pain. Which means we're bringing in Snuffouts, because they're a creature deck. Obviously, we want to kill Snuffouts. This is where I actually realized that Fling and Temur Battle Rage, they might be okay, but honestly, like I said, I know this is already a favored matchup for a general black sack list. I don't need anything fancy. So I actually opt to take the splash out. And because I'm taking those 2 colors out, those 2 colored cards, and I have no others, I actually take out 2 freebooters as well, as they're our weakest fodder if we're not going for the splash. So I take those 4 out and swap them in for Snuffouts.
Yeah. No, that's nice that your deck can basically turn back around and become like the original version of it. Almost. Right. Like, you probably still had 2 freebooters in.
2 freebooters and something else that makes us down. Like we don't have right of consumption, so there's definitely a few differences. But it definitely can shift to be pretty similar to the original.
Okay.
And here we get a pretty nice hand yet again. If you can't see it, it's a Mortician Beetle, 2 Nezumi Link Breakers, an Accursed Marauder, Bloodthorn Vampire, and 2 lands.
Do you expect, are there any things that you're worried about seeing from a spy player post sideboard that you think could impact your deck negatively?
There's nothing that I'm that worried about. The things that I would think are possibility is like a Fairy Macabre, which he actually shows right here. It's a creature. It goes into his deck perfectly. You can draw it off of a Lead the Stampede or a Winding Way. And while I often mention this, I'm not that worried about Graveyard Hate. It can still catch an unearthed creature before it gets on the field, or a creature that's dying and coming back to a stamina. So I'm not super surprised to see that. But there's nothing that I'm like majorly surprised by. Like their Flaring Pain, which wrecks a Prismatic Strands opponent. It doesn't matter to me. Unless they're doing like a Chrysalis sideboard or something, which also isn't that big of a deal because I just play Beetles and they grow with the spawn. I'm not really too worried. It's mostly the same game post combat, except that I have Snuffouts now.
Yeah. And I saw the opponent try to double land grant there, which sadly doesn't work out that way. I've almost done it a couple of times. Land grant can be a really awkward card because you you sometimes forget the text that you need to not have any other lands in your hand. And when you run a deck with such few lands, when I'm running elves, I'm running 8 lands, and it's a similar thing where you're not used to land granting when you have lands in hand.
Yeah, so he was probably just trying to shortcut and potentially make it so he doesn't draw a land, which is totally fine. But I did remind him that, like, well, after the first one goes off, you already have a land in hand. He'd already played his land for the turn, and so he couldn't do that. But he just plays it the next turn. It's not that big of a deal.
Yep. Easy
we do start with our beetle. Again, I'm not worried about removal, and I know that there's a possibility I might just want to jam a Marauder immediately, and that would grow my beetle and also kill his first creature. I decide not to do that because I draw another beetle. And so I instead want to get counters on that too. So I decide to play that beetle and a link breaker here instead.
Yep. And there's some value to bringing in the Marauder later where you have a creature that you can sack to it and keep the 2/1 and potentially return it later for more sacks down the road.
Yeah, 100%. The trick I did last game with the supernatural stamina on it in response to sacking itself, if you don't have the stamina at that exact moment, you want to sack another creature like a link breaker here, keep the Marauder around, and then later when you have the ability to sacrifice it and you have that stamina in hand, you can do that trick to get even more value.
Makes sense. All right. So opponent is representing 3 mana right now.
Yeah, 3 lands on board, but he has a Roostseek as well as Roostseek in hand, your Saga Wildling, as well as a Cerulean Caretaker and an Elves of Deep Shadow here. So potentially 4 mana. Obviously, the Roostseek he didn't use, so he'd have to use it next turn. I know that this does mean he could have a Spy next turn if I don't do something, so I'm going to have to play the Marauder. And I do have the Supernatural Stamina here, but looks like I opt not to use it.
Yeah.
And I still sack the Marauder to itself. And
so do you think he has the land in hand? I can't think of another reason that he would have chosen not to Roostseek there. To pull the land out of the deck.
I'm not sure. He was playing some of those like a little slow, so I'm not exactly sure why.
Oh, it's because he had
and I will say I think I thought I was making a really clever play here by attacking, and then he went to block the link breaker with the caretaker, and then I stamina'd the link breaker just to give +2/+0 and kill his creature, which looks really cool. However, if I just cast the stamina on the Marauder, I would have not given him the choice to do that, and I would have grown my beetles both 2 more counters. So that's a little bit of what we call fancy play syndrome, where I thought I was doing something really clever, and in fact, actually just a big mistake. I was like, oh, this is way better this way, but I could have, like, if he didn't block, he still have his caretaker, and I would just have 2 5/5s instead. Yeah. Which is kind of relevant because he's not as low on life as I would hope. Like 13, I can maybe get their lethal next turn, but it's not a guarantee. Well, I guess with the Bloodthorn Vampire and the Link Breaker in hand, it is a guarantee, but
right.
Yeah, definitely just I didn't even notice this until we're watching the replay, and I'm like, yep, that was not the way to do that. So look, there's always more stuff to learn.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I guess you're probably a little bit more used to most people than most people looking back and watching your play, just because of your job and the streaming that you do. But it can be surprising to look back at gameplay and see the mistakes that you made, the lines that you might have missed, because it's much easier to make decisions when you're sitting back and not in the middle of a game than when you're there face to face trying to make all the right plays.
Yeah, I mean, obviously most people aren't going to have access to a replay camera for their matches at their locals, but if you play a lot of MTGO or anything like that, there are replays on MTGO, and it can be really handy to look back at those games that you've already played. And also, it's just another reason why it's handy to talk with the people after your matches. Like, oh, in this situation, I was thinking about doing this, and then, should I have done this? And I've had tons of people who are like, well, why didn't you do this? And it's like, oh, I should have done that.
Yeah. And yeah. Oh, so yeah. So now we see the spy player just trying to survive, which is not the place they want to be, because again, they need 3 creatures out, or 2 creatures plus the spy, in order to resolve their combo. and without them being able, or with them being forced to chump block every turn, it's putting them in a really rough spot.
Yeah, luckily for me, my mistake didn't cost me anything because I was already quite far ahead here. So he blocks the vampire. I say, I'll sack this one thing. I'm hitting
Mm-hmm.
you for 9 with the Beatles. He has nothing else to do.
Yeah.
And that Fairy Macabre that he brought in didn't even end up mattering. Oh, I will say that's why. That's why I did the fancy play, is that, oh, okay, I didn't make a mistake. Look, I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm talking about. I knew I caught something. He had a Fairy Macabre, which he showed me. If I went for the stamina on the Marauder, he would exile it before it comes back.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So I knew that. And then that's why I was like, oh, I don't actually care to get the return value from this because of the stamina. It doesn't matter. So I'll just get the +2/+0.
Mm. And then sometimes watching back the video is when you're wrong.
Yes. So actually, I played perfectly, and you should never doubt yourself.
All right. Here's the die roll. All right. 7. Very average.
Yeah, that's what I get a lot. People calling me very average, that is.
Yes. Very. That's why we call you very average, Marsh.
Yeah, that's my name. Yeah, so this is round 3. We're going to be going up against Ruby Storm here, which is an interesting match. I will say that I think Ruby Storm isn't necessarily. It's probably pretty even here. I think like Black Sack is always a deck that I'm pretty happy to play against most combo decks with, because that means they have very little interaction. It's pretty much just a race to get there. And as I mentioned before, like turn 4 undisrupted win from Black Sack's not too difficult with the right hand. And so assuming they don't combo earlier than that, it's not necessarily the worst thing.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, because really I feel like in a matchup like this, when you're playing a combo deck, it's just who can get there the fastest. And Ruby Storm can get there really early sometimes. I think I played some usually around turn 4 is their fastest, right? I don't know if Ruby Storm can handle a turn 3. Do you know?
They definitely can. Turn 3 is definitely viable. I've heard of like a turn 2 win. I think that's
wow.
like diamond in the rough, almost never going to happen. But turn 3, it's I think similar to Cycle Storm in that like it never wants to go for a turn 3, but if it has to, sometimes it can get there. Its goal is, and it's definitely most comfortable at trying to get a turn 4 though, like you said.
Yeah, and looks like you're able to put out the turn 1 carrion feeder, which is nice to do. Have a matchup where you don't have to worry about putting it out later. You can just try to get as quick a speed as you can.
Yeah, I will say, obviously, with Black Sack, you always want to be on the play. You want to be going fast. But one benefit of going on the draw, especially game 1, is that if you don't know what you're up against, you don't necessarily know how to play out first. So I almost always lead on the cautious play of playing like a fodder creature turn 1 if I don't know what my opponent is on. He played a what is that, Hickory Woodlot turn 1, and unless it's Poison Storm, I know it's going to be Ruby Storm. Either way, I want to get a fast start, and I'm not worried about removal. So I'm putting the carried feeder down regardless.
Yep. And I imagine oh, go ahead.
Sorry. No, go ahead.
I was going to say, and I would say that I imagine what's going through your head right there when you're trying to decide what to do next is how can I get lethal on the board as quick as possible?
Yeah, exactly. We did keep another one lander here, a one lander with a lot of utility. We have carrion feeder, beetle, supernatural stamina. It looks like we drew another stamina. We also have our Teamer Battle Rage, Nested Shambler, and I think another fodder creature or two. So the question is, do I want to play carrion feeder into beetle, and then I can start playing my fodder creatures, and I have 2 1/1s that'll grow to 3/3s to 5/5s, etc. Or because of the staminas, I can just go straight for getting carrion feeder to be like a 7/7 if I want that, because I can go for the stamina on the shambler. I opted to go for the shambler here. I'm honestly not sure if this is the correct play. With double stamina, I think my goal was like, I can stamina this once, I can make like a 7/7, and then I can stamina it again. Well, not a 7/7 because I won't sack the shambler the second time. I'll make like a 5/5, then I can stamina it again, make like an 11/11. We can maybe get like that turn 4 win. But if I had just played the beetle, my goal obviously is to draw another swamp here, right? If I draw the beetle and then I go for a shambler stamina the following turn, I could get like 2 5/5s hitting in at the same time, and we'd be hitting for a lot more. But I will say either way, I'm pretty reliant on getting a swamp here. If I don't get a swamp, I'm probably going to be a little slow.
Yeah. Yeah. And looking at your opponent's board right now, it's great that you have this aggressive start, but now at this point, they're representing 4 mana on the battlefield. Or no, not 4 mana, 6 mana on the battlefield.
Yep.
with a mana reducer already out. So their deck is definitely capable of going off from this point. Now, as the Ruby Storm player is probably considering over there, okay, I'm going to wait until the last turn I have to go off. So they're obviously feeling a little comfortable. They're comfortable enough to pass here, assuming that they have the ability to go off in hand.
Yeah, I think that they assume that they can't die here, or maybe with the
Mm-hmm.
right sequence of plays from me, they would go for like a chump block or something. I will say if I got a swamp, I might be able to do enough damage here to be lethal. Like with a supernatural stamina on the Shambler and like theoretically like a third stamina, I could like that would be what 10, 13. I think that would be 15 power from the carrion feeder. But maybe if I played the second swamp and just attacked with a bunch of mana up, they would go for a block. I play a Shambling Ghast pre-combat, which was probably not the right call. I will admit. The Ghast was fine. The reason I put the
Mm-hmm.
Ghast down is so that I can pick off a Thornscape Familiar if they get that. I didn't need to do
Okay.
it pre-combat. There was no reason to show them that one, I have a way to kill their Anarchomancer if they block a 1/1, and also if they blocked, I would want to go for a stamina anyway. So that was like a little sloppy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But now, with the potential of creating a treasure next turn, you have the potential to team or battle rage out, and your opponent is no longer in a safe place.
Yeah,
Right? You're at this point, you're definitely presenting lethal.
for sure. Unfortunately for us, like you said last turn, they had 6 mana. Now they have 8 mana, plus the Anarchomancer, which just represents an insane amount of mana. They go for a Laughing Mad here, which is discard and draw 2 for 3 mana with flashback for 4. Of course, you want to reduce it as much as possible.
Yeah. And Ruby Storm's strategy here is to reduce their costs for their spells enough that they can start basically casting their card advantage spells that also produce mana for free, or even producing additional mana. So it gets to the point that some of their spells become rituals, producing mana as well as discarding cards and drawing card, and allowing them to cycle through their deck. With the end game being the card Seize the Storm, which lets them create a red elemental creature token with trample with its total power and toughness equal to the number of instants and sorceries in their graveyard, plus the number of cards with flashback they own in exile. So they can create a giant elemental, especially if they're able to give it haste utilizing first day of class. They can potentially just win in one turn, which is what the opponent looks like they're trying to do right now.
Yeah, definitely the goal is to make sure you have that haste enabler with the first day of class, and then make 2 or 3 or 4 storm tokens. Even sometimes one will do it, but in case that your opponent has like a removal spell, like obviously I'm tapped out, but I could have a snuff out for 1 or even 2 storm tokens. So they playing as safely as they can. They want to make as many tokens as possible.
Right.
But yeah, they have the second Anarchomancer out here at this point. Seething Song is just +4 red mana, which is pretty impossible for us to deal with. Of course, we don't have any interaction here unless they play a Thornscape Familiar, which I can pick off with the Shambling Ghast. They already have 2 Anarchomancers, so setting that back is really not going to make that big of a difference. And we do see the first day of class here coming out.
Yeah.
Which also allows them to learn, so they get to pull out a card from their learn sideboard. They're going to have probably Firebending Lesson as removal. They're going to have Origin of Metal Bending to give protection, but the big one that they usually get is Abandoned Attachments, we see here, which is just another discard and draw 2 for a red and a colorless, and or a generic mana. Since the generic's reduced, it's just a single red mana.
Yep, sounds good. And then also, I'm not sure if you said more Origin of Metal Bending, but Origin of Metal Bending is also a toolkit card that they have in their sideboard that allows them to give a creature potentially indestructible until end of turn, which would help them get around a snuff out if you were saving one in hand. But I think at this point they don't really need it.
Yeah, no, I think they're going to be just fine here. They find a Thornscape Familiar, and they go to the first day of class is a trigger that puts a counter on the creature, so they immediately put the counter on it, and I realize that I need to here, if I want to kill it, sacrifice the Shambling Ghast in response to the trigger. I had forgot about the trigger, so I was thinking that I would need to wait until they pass priority again after casting some spell, but with the trigger on the stack, I got to respond then. I will say their deck is so many instants that with this killing the Thornscape on the stack, they end up casting a few more spells here
Mm-hmm.
and getting that full reduction. So the Electric Revelation and the Laughing Mads from the graveyard are only costing a single red for the flashback.
Yeah. So yeah, at this point, I think the biggest weakness of Ruby Storm is sometimes it can be its own worst enemy, right? So the opponent does still have the potential that they could fizzle here and just kind of draw into either lands or just rituals and have a hard time coming back. Now, again, their deck's designed to avoid doing that as much as possible, but it definitely happens. And I've definitely won some games just because my Ruby Storm player that I'm playing against does fizzle.
Yeah, they're definitely. It's a pretty tough spot for them to fizzle here because they already have the Seize the Storm in
Mm-hmm.
exile, and I am cutting it off from reducing by 3. Maybe it'll only reduce by 2, but one Seize the Storm token is probably pretty close to lethal at this point.
Yeah,
But if they aren't able to one shot me, then it's possible I can come back and kill them from here.
exactly. Yeah, and that is sometimes Ruby Storm players are stuck into that point where they're like they're kind of their backup plan is to create either like a 10/10 or just a large creature that they can just defeat somebody over a couple of turns. That's hard to do in this matchup because you are probably able still to get in lethal, especially if you drew something along the lines of like a fling or something like that. But Teamer Battle Rage might have a hard time getting over a 10/10 token at this point. But
Yeah, seeing as I had to sack the gas to not make a treasure, I only have 1 black mana. I don't have that many creatures on board. I think that making just like a 10/10 would probably be fine.
yeah,
But they go for a Glimpse of the Impossible. They hit another first day of class and I believe that's a new crossover collaboration from Marvel, which I found out is an insane card for this deck. If it's reduced by 2, it costs, of course, just a single red mana. It does the same thing of exiling 2 cards. You can play them until the end of your next turn. But if you tap a 2-power creature, you get a treasure as well, which means it's free, essentially. And not just free, filters your mana a little bit. So if you need to turn your red into a green or a blue, even because there's some sideboard cards that are blue, they can do that.
yeah. Do you think there was a consideration at all that maybe it wasn't worth killing the mana reducer at that point, since they have 2 backup ones? That maybe having the treasure token to present lethal on the following turn was more important.
Frankly, I don't think killing the creature reduced their ability to go off that much, but I've already pretty much lost this game and
Mm-hmm.
accepted that I think I'm not thinking about the next turn because I'm not confident I'm going to get another one. That I think killing the Thornscape was probably still the right call.
Mm-hmm.
If I had gotten the treasure and I somehow don't die, I don't think I really have much in my hand unless they like make one big guy attack with it and it's somehow not lethal and then leave themselves vulnerable to me getting like a Teamer Battle Rage in. I don't really see a way that the treasure would be more helpful than trying to kill their Thornscape here.
Yeah.
And if they
The
do
other
find any more of those Laughing Mads or anything, having them be cost 2 mana from the graveyard could be relevant.
Yeah. Yeah, and then the other possibility would be a top deck fling. We kind of block out the opportunity for that because that would be the other way to potentially take them out next turn, I think. Attacking
Yeah,
with multiple ones.
that would be decent. Yeah, I mean, if we attack with a whole team, we get in with a couple of 1/1s, and then I can the carried feeder can only be an 8/8 here, but if we're able to hit for just 1 damage, we could definitely get there.
Yeah.
The fling is a 1 of, so it'd be difficult to find, but it's possible that would be the out. But at this point, we're pretty much dead. Like
Right.
with some relatively high stakes. And
Mhm.
we had plenty of time on the clock. I didn't see a reason to concede early, just on the off chance that he whiffed or misplayed. But I wasn't really expecting that. He seemed to be a pretty
Yeah.
competent player on the deck.
Yeah. It's really tough to disrupt Ruby Storm strategy as well. I've found unless you have a very large amount of removal, it's really hard to keep up with their plan of like fizzling them out because graveyard strategy, like removing graveyard, I found is relatively ineffective. Um, when I've done like sideboarding in the past, and when I've talked to Ruby Storm players, they're usually not too worried about people bringing in graveyard hate. But it's a powerful deck when it goes off.
Yeah, I mean it's one of those decks that when it goes off properly, it feels kind of unfair. Like, how on earth do I beat this?
Mm-hmm.
And if they only find one cost reducer and you kill it immediately, the deck seems terrible because they're playing these like 2 or 3 mana draw 2 that go in end of the next turn. But yeah, I will say Graveyard Hate is a decent tool. I think if you have a Relic of Progenitus, Nile Spellbomb, you should probably be bringing them in for the matchup, because often they will get to the point where they have a Storm token that or two that attack, and you can reduce those to like 3/3s or something like that, depending on how many flashback cards they have in exile, because that still counts.
Yep.
But with the right draw, they can also just use first day of class to give 1 or 2 counters to their team, and then just beat you down with a bunch of their cost reducers that become like 4-power creatures, all have haste. And so it's not, it's definitely not something like against Spy, where a relic is just going to stop them dead in their tracks.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I appreciate our opponent over there sideboarding for us, face up. So we're able to see.
Well, here I think they're actually just
they're pulling out
taking
like sideboard cards. You're right.
They're taking out the lesson cards that they had brought in with the learn.
Okay, so in this matchup, what are you bringing in from your sideboard to?
Yeah, so I have 2 different ideas here. I think that the general way to beat Ruby Storm, kind of like we were talking about, is just kill all of their enablers. And so you want to just make sure they can't reduce their creatures. So at first, my thought is let's bring in all our snuff outs and just kill them on sight. But I think with our deck, we have a little bit of wiggle room to do some other things, because first of all, I have all the blue elemental blasts that I can bring in, which why wouldn't I? It's going to counter just about anything in their entire deck. And so I will say one thing I was doing when I was building this deck with the sideboard is that I didn't want to have any match where I was bringing in more than like 6 sideboard cards, because I didn't want to like have to bring in 10 and like severely alter the game base deck. Exactly. And so I couldn't necessarily bring in 4 snuff outs plus 3 blue elemental blasts and anything else that I wanted if I wanted some more stuff. So yeah, I brought in Fling, Temur Battle Rage, and the 3 blue blasts.
Okay.
And my thought there was that obviously Temur Battle Rage just does double damage. And also if they do go for a chump, which they don't want to, but in the right situation they might have to, Trample is really good. And then Fling is just double damage because they're mostly not going to be blocking. So I just wanted to go even faster here is what I decided to do instead of bringing in the snuff outs.
Okay.
And the blue elemental blasts, of course, can catch the reducers anyway.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What do you try to counter in this matchup? So that's one of the things I've always kind of struggled with when watching Ruby Storm is how you determine what to counter.
Yeah, I think kind of the most important thing is the cost reducers, like we said. So like the fact that the blue elemental blasts cost a blue instead of a snuff out, which is free, is a little silly that like, oh, we're still trying to target their cost reducers. But the fact that it can also counter their mana or their card draw, depending on the situation. I think the most important thing is to be vigilant in like seeing what it is that their choke point is. Like, are they desperately drawing more cards to try to find another ritual, in which case cut off their mana, counter the Seething Song, especially if they ever go to like literally mana at 0 in the pool, they've tapped everything and they like cast a Seething Song trying to get up to 5. That's the perfect point, because they have no interaction at that point, because they can't like red blast you back or anything. Not that they're going to be bringing those in against us, but so it's that, or it's if they have 8 mana in their mana pool and they're pretty desperately trying to draw for more draw cards, you want to counter one of those. So it really just depends on the situation as to which one of those you want to go for. But I would say you don't want to hold it until they go for a first day of class or like a Seize the Storm. I think by that point you're a little too far gone if they've already kind of like done most of their combo.
Yeah, that's good. It looks like we lost the score on your phone. Your phone must have died on that one.
Yeah, I think I'll turn it back on at some point. Maybe not.
But that's okay. Guess what? This matchup, life total doesn't matter too much.
Yeah.
Their life total matters. Yours does not, because you're almost like assuredly going to die in one swing. But there is there's another game plan that Ruby Storm can kind of play on, where I've seen them go off by basically running a first day of class out into a bunch of mana reducer creatures that all come in with an additional +1/+1 counter and haste, and come in and swing for lethal that way, which is also just like another interesting axis that the deck can run on.
Yeah, that was kind of the one that I was mentioning, that like if they need to try to avoid like Graveyard Hate or something, that might be the play that they go for, especially if they get two first day of classes, where they're getting two counters. They only need like 5 cost reducers to be able to do that, whereas if they only have one, they need like 7 if they're one-shotting you. I do take a mulligan here from a pretty bad hand to probably a pretty bad hand that I probably should have gone to 5. It's really hard to go to 5 with this deck, but I kept
Hmm.
3 fodder creatures, 2 swamps, and a fling. It's just a bunch of 1/1s, and my goal is obviously if I get a carrion feeder or a bloodthorn vampire, the hand might get a lot better. But if I
Hmm.
don't, I'm just relying on getting one of those like 8 cards in the deck, and it looks pretty rough right now.
Yeah, with a Bloodthrone Vampire, you didn't top deck one, but with a Bloodthorn Vampire, you would potentially have 4, 5 sacks, now 6, 7 sacks. So that's just one attack and one fling, and you would have the game.
Yeah, exactly. So that was part of the thought process. I still think this was not a great keep, but like they're at 16 now. I don't know why I didn't turn my phone back on here. I
Hmm.
guess I was a little tilted or something. Not really, but yeah, if we attack for 4, get them down to 12, I can with the swamp in hand, I can immediately cast a vampire, sack everything, make the treasure from the freebooter, and go for the fling, which is pretty much my only way to win here. Even if we get a carrion feeder, I could do 8 damage. So I guess a carrion feeder in the next 2 turns could get there, but it's still gonna be a little slow.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yes. Okay. And you are picking away too with your 1/1s at the same time.
For sure.
And not to mention the fling could potentially be a surprise, right? Like your opponent might not assume that well, they might not assume that you have like a fling type effect that you're ready to throw at them, and they might not choose to go off try to go off the turn before, and you might be able to sneak in a win.
Yeah, of course, actual fling is a bit of a surprise. In this match, it's probably not that different from Rite of Consumption, which if they've played against this match
Hmm.
already would anticipate. So they might be careful to try not to go down low enough, but playing around a top decked vampire into the fling is probably not something they're going to do. But I will say this is their turn 3, and they go for a Manamorphose into an Anarchomancer, and then a Desperate Ritual. And so
Mm,
that tells me that they're really
doing
going off.
something. Yep.
Yeah, if they had just done the Manamorphose into the Anarchomancer, maybe that's more setup turn. But once they go for the next ritual, like they're clearly trying to go for the win here.
Yeah. And then it becomes the waiting game.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, they try to win. Yeah, it's hard because you need to, um, especially in a competitive setting like this, you need to be able to watch what your opponent's doing, make sure they're playing correctly. Um, and again, this your opponent seems very proficient at this deck,
Hmm.
but just making sure that they're playing everything correct, because even just like one missed mana or one missed reduction could cause a fizzle.
Yeah, I don't play against Storm in paper that often, and so I will say, like, with all of the mana dice going up and down over and over, there were a couple of times where I was like, are we sure this is the right number of mana? And every single time it seemed like it was the right call, and it was just I was missing how much mana he had or whatever. But he
Hmm.
gets a Thornscape Familiar down here. I mean, it's not over yet technically, but the second cost reducer is where it gets really good, because I would say, 50% of his deck is probably like 2 drops, and then another 40% of it is 3 drops. So once you're reducing everything to just a single red pip, it's kind of hard for them to stop, because they Manamorphose here, which gains them mana. They have another crossover collaboration, which is, as we said, with 2 cost reducers and a creature to tap, totally free, because they get the treasure back as well as drawing 2 more cards.
Yeah, and with I'm trying to think. They're only 4 and 5 drop spells before flashback are Seize the Storm and Big Score, and even Big Score, if it's reduced twice, it's a free spell.
Yeah,
So
that makes the
yeah.
2 treasures. I will say I don't think there's a lot of different Ruby Storm versions out there. I know that Kali Kai's the original brewer of the deck has tried just about everything under the sun, and so I don't think we saw any big scores or Pirates Pillages in this list. Um, Instead, favoring all of the Reckless Impulses, the Ren's Resolves, and of course the new crossover collaboration, the Glimpse the Impossible. And so they're mostly going for those 2 and 3 drop uh,
Hmm.
spells instead of the more expensive but also more valuable 4 drop ones.
Yeah, I will say it's been fun kind of watch Ruby Storm. It seems like they get a new tool to try almost every set.
Yeah,
It's
I
been
will say
interesting to watch.
I think that just as often as we're getting a new Tormenting Voice, which is a 2 mana discard and draw 2 that we
Hmm.
have that are always being played in every deck in the format, we've been getting just about as often a Impulse draw 2 type card, and
Hmm.
most of them can fit into this deck pretty nicely.
Yeah,
As especially Power Creep makes it so that again, like the Treasure is really good, or Glimpse the Impossible getting 3 cards is just kind of crazy, even if it is
yeah.
only for this one turn.
Have you ever played Ruby Storm?
I've never played Ruby Storm. I'm not that much of a Storm pilot.
Hmm.
Uh, since I don't have that much experience with any sort of Storm, like I know what the deck's trying to do. I'm sure I would be very bad at it unless I practice a bunch. But it's not usually my style of deck.
Yeah.
What about you? Have you played this or any other Storm deck in Pauper?
No. I've never played a Storm deck in Pauper. I played against plenty of Storm decks in Pauper, mainly because Phil at our store at 5-6 Gaming in Columbus really loves to play decks like this, combo e decks. And so I've been been on the other side of this many a times.
For sure. Yeah, our local meta doesn't have that many combo or storm pilots. There's a few, but usually even the ones that there are, sometimes they're playing some like mid-range piles. We have one pilot who does a good amount of the team or pizza combo deck, but he also
Hmm.
plays like Grixis Affinity and some other stuff too. So not as much combo at our store.
Yeah, as far as popularity is concerned, I'm less likely to see Ruby Storm, more likely to run into Cycle Storm. It seems like it's a little bit more favored of the Storm decks, ever since the release of Page Loose Leaf, and that increasing its consistency.
Yeah, definitely increased the deck a lot. I also think Cycle Storm's been around a little bit longer. So
Hmm.
you also have people who have had it for a couple of years and it means a lot to them or whatever. And then obviously getting new tools is nice. Whereas Ruby Storm is a relatively young deck that also is getting a lot of new brand new tools. I think honestly Ruby Storm is kind of similar in Black Sack, not in gameplay or anything, but in that they're both decks that have just every couple sets gotten a new card printed to the point where like this deck probably wasn't viable 2 years ago, but all of a
Hmm.
sudden it's like, oh, we have all of these, cheap Exile 2 cards in red, and Black Sack has gotten Nizumi Linkbreaker only a couple years ago. Infestation Sage is relatively new. Greedy Freebooter, like most of the cards in Black Sack are like
Hmm.
2 or 3 years old or less.
Yeah, and while your opponent's still going off here, I do see they have a Weather the Storm there, which is probably the nail in the coffin for you.
Yeah, they said they weren't sure if they should have brought it in here, which did tell me that they probably haven't played against Black Sack a ton,
Mhm.
because like I think Weather the Storm in general is not a card that you want to bring in against Black Sack if you're just like a control deck, right? If you're Golgari
Mhm.
Gardens or something like that, where you're getting maybe 12 or 15, I can deal that amount of damage in one turn pretty easily, and sometimes every single turn. But if they're going to gain 60 life because they're a true storm deck, then that's going to give them enough time at the very least.
Yeah.
But they also just had their storm payoffs, the Seize the Storm. So we were actually dying this turn, and if we didn't, obviously they'd be gaining a crazy amount of life anyway.
Okay. Well, that puts you in the tournament at this point where you are 2-1.
Yep.
The tournament was set up for 5 rounds total,
Yeah. So
and go ahead.
and we had 24 players there, so with a cut to top 8. So a third of the players were making it in. So I knew that 4-1 was definitely going to get to top 8, and even a 3-2 with good tiebreakers was probably going to get there. So I'm not feeling too bad. Obviously, if I lose my next 2 matches, it's not going to go great. But yeah, I think I'm doing okay so far.
All right. So die roll here, an 8. Okay, you're improving. You're working on it.
Slightly above average is
Slightly above
also
average.
sometimes what I'm called. Uh,
Yes.
Yeah, so round 4 here, we are going to be against Elves, which is a very interesting matchup, I think, because when I first made the deck for Black Sack, it was actually a matchup I thought was extremely unfavored, and that was just
Hmm.
because I wasn't playing enough removal in the deck. Once we added 4 Snuff Outs and a bunch of Tragic Slips, and I even have Drown in Sorrow in my stock list, the matchup becomes a lot more favored. Usually, if you can kill one creature, that gives you the tempo to just kind of stomp them, I've
Yeah,
found.
that makes sense because really just if you can disrupt elves, it does slow them down quite a bit. Um, and you're at this in this matchup, your goal is probably to you're the beatdown deck in this matchup, and your goal is to disrupt them a little bit, but really just try to win as soon as possible. Because I would imagine that elves is going to be able to outgrind you in the long run.
For sure. I mean, I think we're the beatdown in 95% of matchups, but that's definitely true here. We our best hand is usually like a carrion feeder and a beetle because we want that consistent damage. Like a bloodthorn vampire, if they don't block properly, maybe I can get there with like a giant vampire. But
Hmm.
usually, I want to have like 2/6/6s that are attacking every single turn that starts forcing chump blocks pretty early because as soon as they start blocking with all their creatures, the game's gonna be over pretty quickly.
Yeah, looks like you're mulling to 5 on the first the first hand.
Yeah, that first hand was 2 swamps and 5 fodder creatures,
Uh-huh.
which is just not going to cut it. I do also think I might have already known that my opponent was on elves just because it's round 4 by now in a pretty small tournament. I'd been walking around a little bit and seeing what some people were on.
Yeah.
But I mean, frankly, 5 fodder creatures is not a keepable hand, no matter who I'm against.
Yep. And this actually this opponent that's playing you now played me a couple rounds before, right next to you. So I think you were
Yes,
aware from that.
that would be why. Yeah, you're right about that. So we keep a 5 card hand here, and it's not bad. It is a 1 lander, but we have a Link Breaker, a Village Rites, an Unearth, and an Accursed Marauder. So if I can get to that second land, we can Marauder a creature away, unearth it to get another creature. Plus, of course, we have the Village Rites to hopefully bridge the gap between that first and second land.
Yep. And it looks like your opponent's reading the card right now, which shows that the opponent may not be as familiar with mono black immediately, which can be really valuable for this deck because you can really sneak out some wins if people aren't familiar with the deck.
Yeah, I think that the vampire, like I was saying, is not generally what you want to start with in this matchup. But if your opponent doesn't know they need to block a vampire because it can deal 17 damage out of nowhere, that can
Hmm.
obviously be a pretty big boon. I do
Right.
top deck the second swamp here, so that gives us options. So I no longer have to Village Rites my creature here, and I'm pulling up the life total here, which means that I can also put down that vampire. I could go for the Marauder right away, but I think we're not getting enough out of that, seeing as they have just a couple of dorks and then the priest.
Hmm.
So I probably go for the vampire here to try to make sure I can push some damage next turn.
Yeah, and this matchup as well, especially pre-sideboard, you're not really worried about removal, which is another real advantage to your deck.
Yeah.
That
Yeah, I'm
you
not
can
worried
just
about them killing
focus
our
on
creatures,
pushing them
exactly.
through. Yeah. All right.
There was still a little bit of consideration for the Marauder simply because I have the Unearth. And so unless I draw a swamp, I'm not going to be able to Marauder Unearth in the same
Mm,
turn. So I could Marauder now so that I could Unearth it later and, get that value. But again, I think I just need the damage from the vampire. If we get another fodder creature, a stamina or something, like a lot of different cards open us up to being able to deal 10-ish damage here.
yeah.
And with their priest, they could also start slamming like Generous Sense and things already. So I need to have a creature that can contend with those a little bit.
Right. Yeah. Your window for Marauder, I feel like, is starting to disappear pretty quick. Because if they can just get rid of their little dorks and play out some new ones and keep their priest out, it's hard for you to really keep controlling their board.
Yeah, I've had some other Black Sack players swear by Marauder being the answer to Elves, is that you just play like 4 Marauders, 4 Unearth, you just make them sack everything. And that I feel like that works if you get a huge number of them, but I feel like the first Marauder feels so bad because it's 2 mana to get their 1/1, and then it's
Hmm.
2 mana to get their 1/1. Once you start unearthing it and you're getting an Ent or a Priest or something, it's a lot better. But it's like I think the third Marauder is pretty good. The first and second are kind of lackluster.
Yeah. Yeah. Once Elves gets to kind of their value point where they're able to be leading the stampedes and winding ways and producing a ton of mana, the removal strategy becomes really hard to keep up with.
Yeah, and they go for a Winding Way at the beginning of the turn here. They get 2 Mana Dorks and a Generous Ent. They play the Mana Dorks, and now the Priest is tapping for 5, and they're also going for a Lead the Stampede here. So
Hmm.
not that much of a development turn necessarily, but like just tons and tons of cards in hand now. They turn up a Timberwatch Elf, a Nyxborn Hydra, and a Sagu Wildling here.
Yeah.
And we still have just 2 creatures on the board.
Right. Yep. Now, I wouldn't say the game is lost by any means. There's still potential for you to turn around and kind of combo out while having a Bloodthorn Vampire out. Um, but it's definitely not boding well at this point.
For sure. I mean, the mulligan to 5 was rough. The fact that we have a vampire instead of like a carrion feeder.
Hmm.
Obviously, a shambling ghast early would have been nice to be able to pick off the priest. Yeah, things are looking a little rough here for sure. And I think we top deck another marauder there. So
Hmm.
don't really have the mana to use them very quickly, but because of that, we just go for a village rights on the link breaker, trying to hit more lands, so I can at least deploy those multiple in a turn. But obviously, more fodder or whatever would also be acceptable.
Right. And I so I do appreciate the sack here to draw to, because really at this point you're asking yourself, okay, where is the line that I can take to potentially find victory? And drawing 2 there is maybe a little bit more of a risky play versus out just playing out your 2-1 because you don't know what you're going to draw or pick up. You might miss a land and then the game is over, but I think the game is over unless something starts happening.
Yeah. Like you said, we obviously want to be the beatdown, but like we're nowhere close to that. And like I think paying 2 mana to Marauder away one of their 1/1s here just doesn't do enough. So I have to hope that I can draw something relevant. And I actually do. I grabbed the Shambling Ghast, which is able to kill the priest. They still have 7 mana on board, but they no longer have 12 mana on board, which is a huge difference when we saw that they have a Hydra and Generous Ent and a Timberwatch Elf.
Yeah,
Plus, we have
absolutely.
that on Earth, which I can now use just to get back the Shambling Ghast if I want to have a way to kill like another one of their 1/1s or something.
Hmm.
Um, or I could just save it for the Marauders. But I think if I draw another Swamp, I'm already going to double Marauder next turn. So I kind of just want to use my mana this turn.
Yep.
Because if we don't get a swap, we're going to already probably play Marauder next turn plus a 1-drop we draw, and then a Marauder the following turn. So it's like I really need to use this 1 mana that I have.
Yep. No, that makes a lot of sense. And the little attack in there with the Bloodthorn Vampire, every point of damage matters at this point.
Yep,
Because again, you could end up with the fling, and that every last point makes the difference.
exactly. And since we sacked the Shambling Ghast already, that turn it was 3 damage. It wasn't even just like a 1
Oh,
damage
okay,
attack.
that's a good point. Okay,
So
that
I
makes sense.
yeah. So I didn't want to waste that. Yeah.
And then did you keep your did you not pump with your mercenary just to keep it back as a blocker, or
Well, we just sacked the Nizumi Link
oh,
Breaker
you
that
just
turn.
sacked it? Okay.
Yeah. So I couldn't pump with it. Otherwise, I would have definitely done it.
Yes.
Because I don't mind. They're not going to have haste creatures, and I'm not worried about blocking here. But
Mhm.
yeah, the summoning sickness. So they do play a Generous Ent, which is scary here. But honestly, their entire turn being taken up by playing 1/5/7 that doesn't have trample at the moment, obviously could gain it with Nyxborn Hydra, is not that scary to me.
Mhm.
So I'm honestly feeling a little bit better here because like before the priest was looking terrifying, and now like we're not in a terrible spot. And I get a
Yeah.
supernatural stamina, which is
Great pickup.
looking pretty good. It gives me something to do with my 1 mana, and I can use it on a number of things here. I could use it on the Marauder. I could use it on the Shambling Ghast to get 2 -1/-1s there.
Mhm. But even asking those questions, you really don't even need to make the decision until you're in combat, right? Like you have the one of the beauties I think of Black Sack. Well, you decide to make the decision here, but one of the beauties of Black Sack is you could potentially attack in and let your opponent block poorly.
For sure. I think if I had more fodder, I would definitely be attacking with the vampire here. I'm concerned with them blocking with the Generous Ent, and then me being forced to sacrifice everything that I have. Because the vampire, once you have nothing else on board, it's really bad. And so I don't really
Right.
think that I can afford to like sacrifice my entire board here just to kill and Generous Ent.
Hmm.
Even though I would sacking the Shambling Ghast twice also be able to pick off 2/1s. But we
Yeah.
go for the Marauder with the supernatural stamina. So we both sack a creature. I sack the Marauder. It comes back. We both sack another creature. I sack the Shambling Ghast, and then I pick off a third elf there. So even though the Marauder, I wasn't loving being able to pick off one elf, taking 3 away really does make a difference here, because now if they want a Hydra, they're only giving +2, and Trample is still not bad, but it's not like as game ending so quickly as it would have been otherwise.
Yeah, I've been impressed this game with how well you've been able to maintain the board with what you've drawn. Shambling Ghast is just a really powerful card in this matchup, especially if it's out early. But even coming out kind of late, you've been able to control the board pretty heavily.
Yeah, Shambling Ghast is like the MVP in this matchup. Like, I play 4 of them in this deck, obviously for the treasures, but I've even started playing 4 of them in a lot of my like stock lists, because especially when Elves is at its like peak, because it's the number 1 card you want against Elves. Like, killing a Priest of Titania while also getting your Village Rights or your counter from a Shambling or a Carrion Feeder or whatever is like really, really good.
Okay.
I will say they go for an attack here. I think they felt like they were still kind of in control because of them having a much bigger creature. I think this might have been a bit of a mistake. I think they might have been underestimating how much damage I could really deal with my creatures here, because my Vampire can just get really large. I play a Shambler with the Mercenary. I can pump it so I can start, I can make 2 squirrels here. And then they have a Timberwatch and a Llanowar Elves, neither of which are very good blockers. So I'm able to actually push some damage here. Whereas if, like you said, they can probably outgrind us. So they have the Hydra in hand. They have, I think that might be the only thing we know about actually, but they can definitely outgrind us here, as long as they don't just die. And they're giving us the opportunity to get in for 3 damage here, which is not the most. I actually choose not to sack the Shambler to the Bloodthorn Vampire because I know I'm going to play the second Marauder here.
Right.
And I want to keep my creatures for the turn I actually need to pump the Vampire to make it either lethal or to like contend with a generous hand.
Yeah, it's like when we were talking about the podcast a couple weeks ago when we were talking about brewing, and but just in general, there's a lot of value to understanding kind of what the meta decks do. For example, this your opponent here I spoke with is not a huge Pauper player. They do play a decent bit of Pauper, but not a ton. I think they were saying they're more of a modern player, and they kind of were picking up Elves to give it a go. And the what you find is that in a matchup like this, it's really hard to evaluate roles super effectively, especially with Elves almost feeling like an aggro deck sometimes. As an Elves player, I don't feel like it's an aggro deck, but sometimes you feel like you're the one that needs to be like turning the corner as soon as possible. And maybe that's not a completely wrong thought for this matchup, because there is the potential that Mono Black Sack can just like combo you out at some point. So you do need to end the game at some point, but yeah, like you were saying, I think maybe that attack was a little bit too aggressive at that point.
Yeah, and I mean, they traded 5 for 3 damage that first turn, so it wasn't the end of the world. But this turn, they went again for that attack and even used their Timberwatch Elf to pump it. I was happy to take 7. They only have 1 blocker here, and I know that our Vampire is currently lethal. So if they want to survive, they have to block the Vampire, and they're still taking like 7 damage from our other guys. They don't realize the Vampire is going to be as much damage as it is, so they actually go for a block on the Mercenary, and I say I'll sack all 6 of these creatures, make it 13 damage, and so that's the game.
Yeah, sometimes it's important to do the math, but really, with Bloodthorn Vampire on the battlefield, it's almost always right to block.
Most of the time, yeah. Unless there's truly like 2 other creatures on board and you're at 15 life, like you usually want to be blocking a Vampire. It's tough because obviously with Elves, you don't want to be throwing away creatures for no gain, but you also don't want to be losing the whole game when you have a lot of cards in hand and a potential to win if you grind it out a little longer.
Yeah, absolutely. So Mulligan, you mulled to 5, ended up taking that game. I think it was a close game. But now, how are you sideboarding against Elves?
Yeah, so this is another one where our rainbow sideboard is not really at its best. We have 4 snuff outs in the sideboard, and that's really all we want. So I believe looks like I maybe am bringing in the Teamer Battle Rage as well, actually. So I think I swap the Fling for a second Teamer Battle Rage, because if they do chump block with a 1/1, we can get them there. And then we bring in 4 snuff outs for our Marauders, which actually did some work. We can see there, take 2 Marauders, Infestation Sage. is the card I've been cutting the most because it's like our weakest fodder when we need the treasures. Also, it is an elf, which means it pumps your opponent's elf payoffs. And also, I took out an unearth, which is just kind of a flex slot there.
Okay.
So yeah, 4 snuff outs is going to do a lot of wonders at pretty much doubling our removal for the small creatures there, or big creatures even.
Yeah, and in this matchup, you're not, again, you're not really super worried about your life total, because when elves kills you, usually they kill you really good.
Yeah.
So it's less of a concern.
100%. I mean, especially if we're able to like stop the Priest of Titania with a snuff out or something, so that they don't even get to the point where they can have big enough creatures to deal us damage. I'm happy to cast 4 snuff outs and go to 4. Usually that's going to be more beneficial than it is detrimental.
So now with the 4 snuff outs, see if you get any of your sideboard cards. But I would say even without your sideboard cards, how do you feel about the matchup game 1? Like, do you feel like you consistently can take game 1 in this matchup?
I think it's a little favored for sure. I mean, it's not enormously, it's probably 55% or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, like we still have the Shambling Ghast and those Marauders, so we do have a little bit of interaction in game 1. And like I said, if you're able to get like one piece of interaction off, usually you can, with the right start of like a couple carrion feeders, the vampire, you can kind of get there. That one was a little awkward because we mulligan to 5, and then I kind of had to like dig my way out of it to actually get there. But yeah, with a Shambling Ghast or something, I'm usually pretty confident here. We do keep yet another 1-lander here.
Yeah, and your opponent just picked up the exile spell, Fairy Macabre. So that's worth of note. I'm sure you took note of it in the game, that that can disrupt your sacking quite a bit.
Yeah. So now that I know they have a Macabre, it's important to just know Supernatural Stamina is pretty much just +2/+0. If we have a second stamina or an unearth, maybe I use one to bait the other, or something like that. But we know that the stamina is going to be a lot less effective, which is good from them having that card. But it also means that it's a card that I don't have to worry about them actually casting, because it just doesn't do anything.
Yeah, it's just kind of a funny dynamic where it's like it only. So you already have ultra value cards that you're like pulling to the graveyard and then pulling back out, and really it's really just preventing them from being even more value. Like, yeah. It's not really a 1-for-1. It's like a 1-for-a-half when you're playing a Fairy Macabre, it feels like.
Exactly. I'm honestly happy to see when my opponents bring in Fairy Macabre against me, because it just doesn't do enough. Like if you want to bring in a sideboard card, your sideboard cards often should be either really efficient 1-for-1s, or maybe it's a 2-for-1, like a Dust to Dust. If you're bringing in a 1/2-for-1 against me, like I'm loving that.
Yeah. The only thing I will say with elves, with how much draw they have in their deck, and with Fairy Macabre being a creature that gets pulled in by that draw, sometimes it feels a little bit free to have in. So even if it just disrupts like maybe one turn or so, just to slow things down enough for like one turn to turn around and turn that corner, it can feel good. But yeah, if you draw it naturally, it feels really bad. But hitting it off of like a Lead the Stampede or a Winding Way feels pretty nice.
For sure. So we did miss our second land with the Village Rites last turn. So I ended up going for another one this turn. Sack the Shambling Ghast. I don't opt for the treasure, even though we're wanting mana, because I want to kill the Quarian Ranger pretty badly. So we pick that off. They did plot a Spinewoods Paladin, so they have that looming for next turn. I have a stuff out already kind of set aside in my hand for it, because I'm probably not going to be able to get a big enough creature to block it anytime soon, and I can't afford to take 5 damage every turn, because then our snuff outs get worse, and eventually we could die to a Timberwatch or a big Nyxborn or something.
Right. Yep. That's one of the ways that elves turns the corner, is throw out these large mid-rangey creatures and just like start attacking and putting their opponent on the back foot for. It's at least one of the primary strategies that elves uses against like mono red aggro type decks, to turn the corner. It may be a little less effective against this matchup, just because your answers to their large creatures are a little bit more absolute. But yeah. So it looks like you just used a snuff out on the Lawnmower Elf, so you decided to attack their mana instead.
Yeah, I don't think I played these first like several turns properly, because I had the snuff out last turn. I could have killed the Llanowar Elves they didn't end up using the Quarian Ranger to untap the elves and actually play the Spinewoods Paladin for full cost. They plotted it, but like I could have killed it last turn and I didn't, and I let them get that extra mana, and then I ended up killing it here just because I think I realized they had another Spinewoods Paladin or something like that we'd seen. They had more big creatures, I think, that I knew about, and so I just
Mm-hmm.
kind of wanted to slow them down. So I thought I had another Snuff Out in hand, but apparently I decided not to keep it for the Paladin. I think I have a Vampire in hand, so I'm like, well, maybe I can get to the point where I can take one hit from it, then I can get a Vampire big enough to hold it back. But I probably should have either killed the Llanowar Elves the previous turn or just not killed it at all.
Yeah.
So I think something in my brain decided that it was better to keep them off the mana, even if it was a turn late.
Yeah, and I will give a shout out to your opponent. Their foiled out Elves deck is beautiful.
Yeah, definitely some bling going on. I am generally such a frugal person when it comes to Magic cards, but
Uh-huh.
Black Sack is the deck that I kind of want to bling out because I like it so much. Unfortunately, some of those old foils are crazy expensive. Carrion feeders are $40. So many of them are $40 or $50. But
That's sweet though. The okay, so looking here, you picked up another Snuff Out, which is awesome. Definitely what you wanted to see.
yeah, really good. They have the Spinewoods Paladin, and then they also got a V2 Inspector here, which is not that much of an attacker, not that giant of an attacker. It's a 2/4, but it's decent blocker and stuff. Something I'm
Yeah.
gonna have to worry about. But I play the Vampire here. It sucks I can't get more down right now because now I have 2/1/1s
Mm-hmm.
that don't really do much. I kind of have to use my Snuff Out or just take this hit or whatever. But I have a Shambler and a Supernatural Stamina for next turn, which could be representing what is that, plus 18 damage to my board. So I could literally hit for 20 next turn with those. And if I get another swamp, I could even have lethal next turn.
Right. Especially with the sneaky Snuff Out to potentially take out a blocker at the same time.
Yeah, I could definitely take this hit and then go for that. I will say because they're at 23 life, like if they were below 20, I might do exactly that. Since they're at
Mm-hmm.
23, I have to hit another swamp to be able to have lethal. They have 4 mana, so they could easily play 2 blockers. I think it's probably worth just like preserving our life total a little bit here and taking out the Paladin, which is what I believe I end up doing here.
Yeah, that sounds fair. I mean, it really slows down their clock, at least on the board. I believe we know that they have a Hydra in hand, but they don't have really the mana to make it super effective. Um,
Exactly.
and also, we also know they still have a Macabre in hand to answer the Stanimo when you try to
Oh
use
yeah,
it on your
of course.
Shambler
Now
as well.
when I'm in the moment, I definitely didn't forget about the Macabre for this match or the other one
Mm-hmm.
we were commentating. But at this point, I'm like, it's out of sight, out of mind. So like, yes, the stamina, the Fairy Macabre would obviously interrupt my ability to do 20 damage there, which is a big difference. I do
Oh,
get my third
Snuff Out
Snuff
number
Out.
3.
So I was definitely feeling a little lucky here, drawing all my sideboard cards.
Mm-hmm. Now that being said, though, you have given up 8 damage to Snuff Outs already, and another 4 potentially. So you're basically dealing over half your life total to yourself this game.
I'm definitely a little on edge that like, yeah, the Snuff Outs are really good, but like I could die if I use a Snuff Out at a wrong time here. So I'm trying to play it safe while also pushing damage. I can't really leave both of my guys back here. They have 2
Mm-hmm.
Quarian Rangers, so I'm happy to attack. If they wanted to go for a block, I sack one thing and I eat 1 or 2 Rangers.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm surprised they don't untap their Reacher there and put up a block.
yeah, I think that'd be a good idea for sure to block probably the Beetle. I can still eat their guy, but I have to sacrifice 3 creatures right then.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, yeah, I think that would have been a reasonable play. I don't know exactly what's in their hand. I know we know about the Hydra and stuff, so they probably want to keep out forests for that.
Yeah.
But I'm not exactly sure. They do say
Um,
no blocks, so I just end up sacking the Link Breaker to get in for 5 damage. The reason I do that is I have a Shambler in hand and 1 on board, and I want the
mhm.
Mercenary to be able to pump it. So I already have an incentive to sack the Link Breaker, so might as well get in for the extra 3 damage here.
Yeah, that makes plenty of sense. Yep. Opponent. Again, I played this opponent earlier, in an earlier round, and they're a good player. Again, maybe not super familiar with the deck they're playing against right now, and that's one of the other challenges of Pauper. Again, it's a feature, but a challenge where there are so many meta decks to be aware of, and especially a deck like Mono Black Sack that is not like the most popular of decks. I mean, it's a known deck, but not the most popular, and especially with your iteration of it, it can be hard to play against.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely, as someone who's very enfranchised, I like that you can play against so many different decks. Keeps it fresh and stuff for me. But I understand, like coming in, it's a lot more overwhelming to be like, well, I've played against 20 different decks already, and there's still way more that I haven't played against that I've never seen before.
Hmm.
It can definitely be a bit intimidating.
Yeah, at the same time, very fun.
Agreed.
All right, so here I wonder what your opponent is thinking. They're probably seeing your. If I was them, at least, I'd be seeing your life total at 10, and I'd be like, "Ooh, it'd be nice to try to sneak something in," but I'd also be very afraid, especially after that last game of that Bloodthrone Vampire.
Yeah.
Okay, so a Hydra here, which I like.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. They noticed that low life total, trample obviously really good, so they want to push that damage. So they go for the Hydra on only for 3 is not the most impressive, but obviously that's what they're working with. And if they have another Hydra in hand or some other ways to pump damage, then they might just be trying to get something going right now.
Yep. The other
But they
thing with these Quarian Rangers is they give a like a type of vigilance almost too, so they can swing in and then untap as a blocker. Doesn't look like they went in for the attack though.
They didn't. I think that they either don't necessarily realize the Quarians could be used in that way, or maybe they're just playing a little overly cautious. Because I
Hmm.
agree that would have been a great opportunity for them to get 4 damage in. I couldn't do anything about it unless I wanted to use my snuff out on just the Quarian Ranger, which wouldn't be that effective for us because they'd still have the Hydra. I might have done it, but um, it's not really where I want to be, and they kind of give us that out by just not attacking.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like that is one of the techs that people miss on Quarian Ranger the most is that it's once per turn, and it can be used on your opponent's turn. It can really throw people off.
Yeah. I do also think that with them having no mana dorks on board, they can't bounce too many lands to their hand. And I think they're probably thinking that because I believe they've hit a land drop every turn here. So if they had bounced a few, they might not have been able to get that Hydra to be as big. So like they
Hmm.
kind of, I think they have a Generous Scent in hand maybe and some other like more expensive things. So they haven't been able to jump from a tiny amount of mana to a ton with a bunch of mana dorks. And I think that's hindering their ability to use the Quarian Rangers as liberally. But I agree, like that attack would have been probably a good one for sure.
Yeah, and then this is a tough block here. That's the other kind of trick with Mono Black Sack. It's really hard to figure out combat when you're playing against a Mono Black Sack deck, because there's just so much flexibility that the Mono Black Sack player has to alter the board in combat. And especially with leaving mana open, with the Stanimas and things like that, it's just there's just such a potential to get blown out, because you block wrong.
Yeah, 100%. They do go for a double block on the vampire here. So they identify that the vampire obviously needs to get blocked just in case I have a stamina or something. But they really just want to force me to use a bunch of creatures to grow it. Seeing as it's the creature that grows temporarily, I don't think it's a terrible idea. But of course, if they block the beetle, it grows half the speed. So
Yeah.
they have a 4/4 Quarian Ranger and a 2/4 V2 Ghazi Inspector here. So I am going to have to sacrifice 4 creatures if I want to kill them both.
Yep. And then they'll receive the macabre to prevent it from being overvalued, but you still are going to get that one sack plus you're going to get those. Was the Shambler pumped as well from the mercenary or?
Yes, it was. So it
Yeah.
was a 4/1 when it died. So I'm going to get 4 squirrels here. Um, so yeah, I still get the extra 2 squirrels for the stamina. I also force them to use the macabre. So if I have another one, another stamina or something later, we can do that. But I was very clear of like, I'm going to sack this. There's a trigger on the stack. Feel free to respond because I knew they had the macabre.
Hmm.
And so obviously I'm never trying to scam my opponent with that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You don't want to try to play so fast that they don't have a chance to respond.
Exactly.
Yeah. So no, then that puts your opponent in a pretty rough spot here. But that was exactly the example we were talking about, where like the macabre got a little bit of value, but you still got 4/1/1s and a sack.
Yep.
So it doesn't feel as great.
Exactly. And I'm deciding here exactly what I want to do because I do have the snuff out. I don't have to sacrifice 4 things to the vampire if I want to just instead snuff out the Quarian Ranger or something. But I figure I have enough creatures on board. I'm hitting for a lot with the beetle, and it'd be much better to just save the snuff out for when for kind of an emergency button when I really need it.
Yeah.
So I do sack.
Plus the Hydra is going to be left behind no matter what. So being able to answer the Hydra, but again,
Exactly.
it's really not that scary of a creature for you at this point, where you have a 6/6 out. You have a bunch of 1/1s that you don't care too much about. They're just fodder at this point, but they can also sneak in for some damage. And your Bloodthorn Vampire that can become huge.
Yeah. Yeah, the concern is being able to push damage while not dying to like a trampler, because like I have a beetle that is a great blocker, I have a vampire which could be a good blocker, but of course I want to be attacking with those. So it's a little tough to know, like, well, can I afford to leave something back here, or do I need to leave something back here? So I mean,
Right.
they could have another Hydra here that they throw on the Quarian Ranger, try to attack for 7. If they do that, I'm pretty much forced to use the snuff out, because otherwise I wouldn't be able to use it anyway, because I'd be below 4 life. So like,
Mm-hmm.
there's definitely some things I'm thinking about here. Of course, we have lethal on board if they attack with everything, but they do have the Quarian Ranger, which could untap and various things like that.
Yep. This is a fun matchup to watch though, because just both the decks do a lot inside of combat, or have a
Yeah.
potential to do a lot inside of combat, which is again one of the things, especially coming from the Ruby Storm game to this game, where there's so much potential and there's been so many decision points that both of you have really the game could have taken completely different direction based on decisions that have been made constantly.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's why I like Black Sack. Probably the number one reason is combat is extremely interesting, which is already my favorite part of Magic. And then you're right, Elves has similar levels of like interesting combat with Timberwatch Elves, Quarian Rangers, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So they go for an attack with a Hydra here, and I have a really tough question because I have the snuff out,
Mm-hmm.
but what do I want to use it on, if anything? So I believe I'm going to end up snuffing out the Hydra. And the reason is if I take 3 from the Hydra here, and then I use the snuff out on, say, not the Hydra, then I'm going to be down to 3, and suddenly that Hydra is going to be lethal with trample. Now I could have some chump blockers for it, just to reduce it from 3 damage. But also if I'm not killing the Timberwatch Elf with the snuff out, then like the Timberwatch can pump the Hydra and it makes it more difficult.
Mm-hmm.
But I do also have the Beetle and the Vampire, which are going to be lethal on this next turn. So I know I'm forcing 2 chump blocks. So I could, let them chump block with their Quarian and their Elves, and then I could snuff out the Timberwatch Elf or something like that, and then the Hydra's left behind. There's a lot of possibilities. But I decided just to kill the Hydra because of one word, which is trample, is the biggest thing I'm concerned with.
Exactly. Right. Because you can chump with your 1/1s for days and not be too concerned about it. But
Yeah.
the trample's going to get through.
Exactly.
Yeah, especially with Timberwatch being able to buff. Though I will say with 3 elves on the battlefield, a little less scary. +3/+3 is not as intimidating. Now with the Quarian, it's potentially +6/+6, which
And
does add up. But
being at 6 life, it can, it is scary enough.
yeah,
but I think
they're gonna have to chump here. So
correct.
You're reducing the number even more.
Yeah, I even get another Beetle, so I actually have a really good blocker now too. I double pump the Shambler. I can sacrifice this, and
yeah.
So yeah, with the forcing the double chump block, I think we get to be in a pretty good dominating position here.
Yeah, I would say it's probably the nails in the coffin.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm trying to think if there's any sort of out from elves. No, the only thing would be like even a Hydra, you just don't have the amount of mana to turn it around.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the game.
Yep. And they have a Masked Vandal and a Saga Wildling, which wasn't doing much good for them. They knew they had a chump block, so they just scoop it up.
Yeah. All right. Sounds good. On to the next
So
game.
yeah, we're 3-1, moving on to round 5, the last round of the Swiss. All right, so here we are in round 5 as the last round of the Swiss, and we're going to be going up against the best matchup to be playing, which is Grixis Affinity, which, in case you can't notice the sarcasm, is the number 1 worst deck for Black Sack, and the deck that we're trying to solve with this version of the deck.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense because I found with the Affinity, especially Grixis Affinity, the amount of removal that they contain in their deck is just unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah,
will say the exact number of removal, like they're not usually running as many as like a Gardens or something like that. They have the 4 Galv Blasts. Sometimes, sometimes they run a couple cast downs or something. But it's the power of the removal because, of course, the Krark Clan Shaman can wipe your entire board. If they give it Death Touch, it can do it with ease. Even without it, sometimes they can just sacrifice 6 artifacts and wipe your board anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's an extremely powerful deck, and I imagine that your deck, even though it does get around removal on some levels, the challenge is that your deck really needs the 2 parts to function. so so if someone's removing your sacrifice outlets, it can really slow you down.
Yeah, the ability to deal 4 damage as early as turn 2 makes it hard to like lead early on a carrion feeder. I even do here, and technically I only have the ability to grow it to be a 4/4, but I do have 2 supernatural staminas in hand. So if they went for like Great Furnace into Galblast, I could save it by just sacking the greedy freebooter to get a treasure, use it on the carrion feeder. But yeah, so the early turns are really scary for the Galvanic Blast. Then, of course, the Krark in the late game. Here we see a second Refurbished Familiar on turn 3, eating one of those staminas into a
Yep.
Neutron Monitor and a Mirror Enforcer. Or no, sorry. He tried to cast a Mirror Enforcer here, but he only has 3 lands and 3 creatures. So I was like, I don't think that's quite enough.
Yeah, and the board state as it is, with Utrom Monitor coming into the format this past year, it allows Affinity to add quite a bit more pressure, but most importantly pressure that's not Karklanable. so
Yeah,
so it allows it to be attacking in the air, add additional pressure, especially with those refurbished familiars. And at this point, if your opponent pulls a Karklan, they have the potential to wipe out your board while completely leaving theirs unharmed.
Yeah, exactly. And in addition to that, we just don't have any blockers for the Flyers. So they have 7 flying powered right now. Usually we'd be playing 4 Infestation Sages, so I could trade with the Refurbs, chump the Utroms, and that greedy freebooter more than likely would have been an Infestation Sage here if I was running the traditional list.
Mm-hmm.
But with only 1 Sage in the main deck, I pretty much just have to race here. I don't have the ability to block any of their guys, and unless I get a Shambling Ghast or an Accursed Marauder, I don't have any removal for them. So I'm already looking at like a 3-turn clock, and I don't have the most impressive board here yet.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. The yeah, and really your board is really depending on your sack outlet there, and if they had a removal for that, it would really set you back. Now, a lot of their removal, other than making something death touch and blocking, um, really depends on damage. So you do have the potential to get your things out of the reach of a galvanic blast, by for example, but
Yep.
then you're clearing out your whole board to do so.
Exactly. Then I'm left with 1 creature that's maybe a 5/5, but they can chump it and keep dealing damage in the air. They do have the Krark here. They're tapped out, so they can't have Toxin. And I, of course, sacrifice the greedy freebooter in response to the Krark. You always want to have your growers to be at least 2/2. This doesn't work with Bloodthorn Vampire, but your Carrion Feeders and your Beetles, you want them to be 2/2 when the Krark is on the board, or rather before it's on the board. Because if they start sacrificing things, you want to let a trigger resolve, kill off the Shaman, and then grow your board. That doesn't always work because obviously the ping from the Shaman can kill your creatures, but it's important that they can't keep up with your feeder and your beetle here.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. But especially with this Kark coming out, I feel like this puts you really far on the back foot, especially as well.
Yeah, we see a bit of a desperate village rights here. I pump the carrion feeder with the mercenary and then immediately sacrifice it. The reason I sacrifice that over the link breaker is that in case I draw a supernatural stamina, I want to have a fodder creature on board to be able to use it. Um, because if I got in the situation where I drew a stamina and a swamp or whatever, like, and I just have no fodder on board, it's really bad. We ended up drawing another link breaker and a vampire here, so like we have some decent creatures on board, but it's just not really that impressive in the face of the Krark and the 7 damage in the air.
Okay. Yep. I'm trying to think. So what's going through your mind at this point? You're swinging in. You're getting uh, hopefully a little bit of incidental damage in.
Yeah, my main way to potentially win this, I mean, I only have one turn because of their flyers. So basically, I'm actually going to pause for you real quick. Basically, my thought process is that I'm thinking about game 2, frankly, but I just don't know how I can really get there here. And so you see, I trade the carrion feeder off for the Mirror Enforcer. The reason for that is I could just keep growing it. I could make it a 5 toughness creature, survive the Mirror Enforcer. I could make it 6 toughness, however big. But then their Krark is just going to sacrifice like 1 or 2 artifacts to kill off my feeder, regardless. And especially if I sack the Link Breaker, they can sacrifice to the Krark in response to the trigger. So then the vampire's going to die right away. Like, there's really no way I can keep everything alive here. I probably should have just gone more in on it. It just felt like if I make it a 7/7 or whatever, they sack 3 lands or 2 lands and a Wellspring. Like, I lose my whole board. And here I have a little bit more like play, I guess. I don't really know. Like, the chances of winning here are like 0%. So I made a bit of a weird play.
Yeah, really, your chances of winning are just your opponent making a poor mistake and you getting unbelievably lucky, which is a lot to expect, especially when you're both 3-1 and have decent records.
Yeah,
And your opponent is, just from watching, is playing very well.
for sure. And yeah, I mean, I didn't necessarily have the best hand here, but I think it just came down to them having a refurb on turn 2 into refurb monitor. Like, that was just, like we said, a really fast clock in the air that I couldn't deal with from the beginning. And so there wasn't a lot of like me forcing them to chump block and stuff like that. Like, we are supposed to be the aggro deck in 95% of matchups, and here we were not succeeding in doing that, which was pretty rough.
Right, which makes a lot of sense. And again, just coming into this knowing that this is your worst matchup, there's probably also a mental game that you're fighting when you get paired up against paired up against a deck like Grixis Affinity. I know there was I was playing the other day mono white weenies against a Gardens deck, which is a terrible matchup for mono white weenies, and it's so hard to like mentally stay in the game when you get paired up in a matchup that's so bad like that, to like continue to play out and play well without basically giving up before the game even starts.
Yeah, it can definitely be tough. I feel like I'm realizing I only play decks that lose to Grixis Affinity because the same thing happened, not the same exact thing, but similar thing happened at Pauper Genesis, where I did really well in the Swiss. This is obviously still the Swiss, but then when we made it top 16, I immediately got paired into Grixis Affinity on Demir Fairies. Not a good matchup. I lost immediately. Also, one of the win duels from earlier in the year, maybe last year, that I'm remembering, like, I was on Black Sack, did well in the Swiss, top 8, played against Grixis Affinity immediately. I did win that match, but it was just like, I feel like every time I get past like a whole Swiss without running into my terrible matchup, it's like it's waiting for me in the top 8 or 16.
Just ready to fight you.
Yep.
Okay, so coming in, what are you bringing in your sideboard against Grixis Affinity at this point?
Yeah, so being the number 1 worst matchup, this is the exact matchup that we're trying to fix with the Rainbow sideboard. And so I already had the exact 6 cards I wanted to bring in mapped before the tournament, which is the 3 blue elemental blasts and the 3 masks of Law and Grace. Their goal is basically the same thing, which is stop a Krark Clan Shaman from killing your board, or with the masks, one specific creature. And the mask does it preemptively. The blue elemental blast does it, when it's on the stack. So the timing is a little bit different there. But yeah, so we're bringing those in. We took out the Fling and the Team Your Battle Rage. It's just not things we really need here. We really just need to stop their Krark, and we're usually going to be set. And also, I wanted to I didn't want to tax, with only 8 treasure makers, it's really hard to have 8 cards in the deck that need a treasure. So I really don't want to have ever more than like 6 of those in the deck. And then I
Yeah.
probably took out the Marauders and something else there.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, now Mask of Long Grace is great because it gets around the Krark, but it does see a little less of the advantage of it making your creatures unblockable in this matchup with the opponent having the colorless creatures. But I think if that is your biggest concern, I think you're probably still doing okay in, in the matchup, right?
Yeah,
Like if they're chump blocking over there, it's not the worst place to be in, especially if you have a Mask of Long Grace on a giant creature.
exactly. If we keep one giant creature and they can jump block with a Mirror Enforcer or a Neutron Monitor, I mean, if they get a Reckoner's Bargain off on that, that is really good for them, and it's not my favorite thing. But unfortunately, there's no Mask of Long Grace that also gives protection from colorless and blue and stuff. But it can make it so it's unblockable from like Refurb and the Krark if they have that, just to chump block as well.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So we see here you took a one lander again.
Yep. It's my favorite thing to do. They did mulligan to 6 here, so that helps a little bit. But we start with a Carrion Feeder, and then followed up with the Link Breaker, sack and keep the Mercenary around, so we hit for 2. I just want to get a little bit of damage going. We do see a Krark Clan Shaman in their hand that they're not deploying yet, which makes sense, but it's looming for sure.
For sure. And I think Affinity especially is always considering because Krark feels so powerful, but it's not free, right? Like they're sacrificing artifacts. A lot of times they have free artifacts or beneficial artifacts to sacrifice, but sometimes they're just sacrificing lands, and it can really set the player back. So those are considerations, and especially with you growing your creatures, like now you have a 3/3 carrion feeder, like a Kark in that situation where their board was at, they would have to sacrifice all their lands to try to kill that off. So
Yeah.
it's just kind of an evaluation, but I think your opponent is making a really wise decision here and trying to set out a clock on you before they start wiping the board so that they can just continue to clear you away while they're putting in incidental damage.
Yeah, they also are just going to have a lot more power to block here, which is pretty good. So we did sack the Greedy Freebooter last turn to scry. We hit a swamp, so we instantly kept that. Here, I'm unearthing the Freebooter to get a little bit more grow potential here. Since I have a second Beetle, I just want to grow my whole board. And so the feeder now is a 4/4. The Beetle at this moment is the 3/2 because of the Mercenary Pump. And then with the treasure from the Freebooter that I resacked, I got the Link Breaker here. They go for a double block on the Carrion Feeder. I understand what they're trying to do. They're trying to like tax our resources here, but I don't think they did the math and realized that I can just sack my fodder here, make a 7/7 Carrion Feeder, eat both of their guys, hit them for 5 with the Beetle, and I don't lose my feeder. Either that or they're trying to get me to do this play, and then they're just going to Krark Toxin, which is also a possibility.
Yeah. But that was a great exchange for you.
Yeah.
Kark Toxin right here would really set you back.
It would probably be the end of the game if they have that. It looks like, seeing their hand, they probably would have slammed it if they had it. They certainly don't. I think if they had gone for a double block on the Beetle, they would have been in a better position because we see the Beetle right here. Well, it would have been a 6/5 actually because that Mercenary Pump. So I guess that would have still traded for both of them. I was thinking it was a 5/5. So I guess that wouldn't have been the best either. I don't know. It could have gone for a chump, then had 2 monitors this turn plus a Mirror Enforcer. Like they have some different different things to do.
Right. And Krark Toxin, do you know how many toxins their Panini players are usually running?
Most lists are running 3, I would say. 2 is not uncommon. But yeah, I would say 2 or 3 is the standard.
2 or 3. Yeah.
And then usually 3 Krark clans. So 3 and 3 is
Quite the
pretty standard.
combo.
It's pretty good. Good against Black Sack, good against Elves, good against a lot of decks in the format.
But not unbeatable, because it is a little bit of a 2-card combo in order to reach the board wipe. So you do have the potential to get get around it by either killing them off early or them just not drawing it.
Yep. So here they this might have been part of why they did the double block. They had extract a confession, which they can use collect evidence to make us sack our highest power creature, which is the feeder. It sucks to see that go, but it does actually grow our beetles, and so we're able to play both of them, or excuse me, attack with both of them, eat their monitor. They keep the Kark because they know they need to draw a toxin here. I just put out a carry in feeder because we drew it. It can grow our beetles one more. If they don't get toxin, they might have to sack their entire board, and I want to have just as many creatures on board to make the beetles as big as possible as I can. So they crack their spellbomb right away to just draw a card, not going for the Krark. So that tells me that, they're a bit desperate here. They have to now get a couple more artifacts. They're at 6. So if they sacrifice all of those, the Carrion Feeder can grow the beetles in response here. So yeah, they're not in a great spot. And they do get a refurb. So they have blockers for everything, which is nice.
Yeah, they do. And but again, you're putting them in this position where they're basically forced to chump. I mean, they could trade for one of your beetles, but then again, your other beetles, they're chumping the other beetle, and then you're getting in for damage.
Yep. And I attack with everything here. I'm not actually sure if I should be attacking with the feeder. My thought was it's lethal right now because I could sack both beetles to it. But if I did do that, they would just sack artifacts to the Krark to wipe the feeder, which is a lot easier.
Right. Plus, they're representing up 2 mana.
Their hand is empty. So
their hand is empty. Okay. So
I knew they didn't have any tricks.
Decent at this point, right? Like
yes. As long as they don't like top deck anything. But I believe they blocked with all their creatures here, so the Krark is going to be dying to the feeder. And I just pass priority. I'm happy to make that trade, seeing as they're chumping with everything. Well, trading with the feeder and chumping with the other two. Like, I'm just passing priority.
Yeah. Now, here it is. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, this is a bit of an interesting situation. So he's thinking about what to do, and he tries to sack the refurb to the Krark Clan Shaman, and I say, sacking that creature makes it so the beetles start growing. And so because it's any player sacrifices any creature, even if you're sacrificing it because it's an artifact, it'll count. So he takes that back. I could have called the judge if I wanted to and said he made that choice, but I decided not to because felt like I was in a good enough position. So he instead decides to sacrifice just to seed the Synod, and he miscounted a little bit here. So I just passed priority on that, and which kills the Carrion Feeder and the Krark. He thinks that that's going to trade with the Beetle, and I remind him it's a 6/6, so it's got 1 damage. The Mirror Enforcer is only a 4/4. So maybe he was just counting the number of counters on it or something like that. So he was trying to kill one of them here and leave us with one, but he ends up scooping it up there.
Yep, and then at that point, with having 2 6/6s on board, it would be hard for them to come back, but it would have been possible. So that, but you see the opponent just go ahead and look at the top card and see that it's not the answer they need and scoop it up there.
Yeah, I mean, if he had literally drawn like Thoughtcast into Krark Toxin, that obviously would have done it. There's probably a few other ways he could have drawn cards there, but he did look at the top card of his deck and thought for a second, so clearly it was like something interesting.
I saw it. It was actually our clan.
It was the Krark. Okay, that's cool. But ended up scooping it up anyway, because that's not going to be enough.
Yeah, I mean, because even getting that out, like, I don't think it was enough to clear the board, and even if it was clearing the board and all of your lands.
Yeah, exactly. I think at that point he only had 4 lands because he sacked the seat, so I don't think it was enough either way. But yeah, so that entire game was just praying for no toxin, because if there was a toxin, we would have lost immediately. We had no interaction for it. We didn't get our blue blast or our mask, but we were able to just make 2 giant beetles and get there with that.
Yeah.
So there's sometimes his game if they just can't draw the cards they're looking for, which is, I mean, kind of how Grixis operates, is they draw a lot of cards, but they don't really get to choose which ones, and so they could just draw the wrong side of it.
And I mean, and as an aggro deck, that's kind of your job too, right? Is that you force the player to not be able to stumble. So if they stumble, you just finish them off. And the reality is decks that are running a little bit more controlling do stumble sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this is one of the best decks you can play to take advantage of your opponent stumbling. Like obviously Red Rally or any sort of aggro deck like that is pretty decent.
Hmm.
We see my 7-card hand here is Nested Shambler ×2, Bloodthorn Vampire, 2 Swamps, and then we have our Blue Blast and our Mask of Law and Grace. However, we have no treasure to make them, and so then we're just left with a bunch of creatures that are going to die to our Kark.
Hmm.
So it's
Tempting.
a little tough because I do have 8. Yeah, I have the answer that I'm looking for. I have 8 treasure makers in the deck. In the right situation, like if I had Carrion Feeder Beetle instead of
Mhm.
like Shambler Bloodthrone, I probably would keep that just because that combo's so good. Well, probably like maybe if I only had one of those answers. That's the other thing is I don't really want both Mask of Law and Grace and Blue Elemental Blast. I kind of want one or the other just because it eats into my fodder count and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's tough though because Mask of the Law of Grace does have the disadvantage of being an enchantment and potentially leaves you at the opportunity of getting 2 for 1, especially on the draw versus the play. Your opponent has the potential to hold up some lethal to clear it out before it actually
Yeah,
results in your creature.
you're definitely right. I mean, the goal is to resolve it while your opponent is tapped out because they won't be anticipating it. But if they never tap out, they're always holding up a Galv Blast, then like, yeah, sometimes you might just have to go for it and hope for the best.
Yeah.
So we do mulligan here, and then they refurb us again. So we're down to 5 essentially here, getting rid of a freebooter. We also have 1 on board.
Looks good. All right, so we see here again, none of your sideboard cards in hand, but a decent. I mean, you have the other parts of your deck, so your deck can do its thing. Maybe a little slow.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a Carrion Feeder and a Vampire here. A little bit of a choice which one I want. I also have a Shambling Ghast, and I make a bit of an interesting play here. I'm pretty sure I kill off the refurb immediately. So Shambling Ghast is really good in this matchup because you can use it to interrupt a toxin hitting a Kark. So you can make sure that they can't get that. So it's really good to just hold it for a while.
Hmm.
But my hand is not looking very good that frankly, I'm going to die to a Kark without a toxin anyway. I'm pretty confident of that. So I think I just want to like slow them down as much as possible.
Yeah,
And so that's why I pick off the refurb. Like previously, like if we could lower their affinity count and also get rid of a chump blocker early, it can be really strong for us.
yeah. No, that's a really good point. And it's one of the ways to disrupt Grix's affinity, right? If you there sometimes they will take a hand that really depends on them having a high artifact count. And if you're able to disrupt their artifact count, either by removing their artifact land or by removing a couple of their early creatures, sometimes it'll just completely throw off their game plan
Yeah,
and really slow them down.
exactly. And that was the goal here. It looks like they probably have enough lands to get around that. We
Yeah.
did go for a sacking the greedy freebooter in the upkeep to scry, and we found that blue elemental blast. So we kept that on top. We have the treasure for it. So in the right situation, we could use it here and get some good value out of it. But we have
Yeah.
a vampire, a 3/3 feeder, and 1 nested shambler. So like they're gonna really need nothing for us to be able to get there because this is gonna be like a 4-turn clock or something.
Yeah, I mean you do have the shambling ghast in hand, right? Like so top decking something to pump that up. You could create a bunch of not shambling ghast, I'm sorry.
Yeah, the nested shambler.
Nested shambler. Nested shambler could explode if you get the little 2 card combo with it in a future turn, but
Yeah,
but
100%. That is the goal. Is like draw stamina here instead of another vampire. Um,
it would, it's nice to see the vampire sometimes, but not in a board state like this.
it's so good occasionally, but it's almost
Uh,
always not something you want to draw a second copy of, which is part of why I've thought about going down to just 3 in the deck, is because like the second one's so bad. But
mhm.
they do play a monitor and they leave up 2 mana here. So they don't have blue mana, but they have red and then red black. So they could have like double galvanic if they're really lucky. The thing that I'm worried about is them having a toxin analysis here. So if I go for an attack, currently our creatures would have to sacrifice at least 1 creature to survive here. I go in with the Carrion Feeder against the monitor. He blocks pretty quickly. I don't really feel like I can give them the time by just like not going in is the problem here, even though I'm pretty confident what's going to happen, which is a toxin analysis.
Right. Yeah, and so your opponent has you in a pretty good position here, right? Where they know that you need to try to turn a corner and like really push in the damage, and because of that, they can sit back and wait for you to fall into the kind of their little traps there, like the block with toxin analysis.
Yeah, it's pretty rough. I mean, Feeder's kind of the only thing we had going for us. Like Vampire's good, but we only have one squirrel on board, so it can't get that big. And then they find a Thoughtcast. So like the only other thing we had going for us was that they weren't drawing super well here,
Mm-hmm.
and that's also changing pretty quick.
And this goes to show too, while Krark is probably the best card against you, especially at toxin analysis, the affinity can definitely win without Krark too. So it's kind of the challenge, especially if you put pressure on.
Yeah. I mean, Krarklan is just kind of the card that like instantly says you lose the game most times, but like, yeah, it is not the only reason this deck is bad for us. It's the Galvanic Blast, it's the million cheap creatures that have really high power, and spell bombs are incidentally annoying. And then, yeah, they have a Torch the Tower here, which is something I wasn't expecting, but it makes some sense because Torch, I feel like Torch is super underplayed because it's the best answer to Sneaky Snacker in that
Mm,
it deals 2 damage to any creature, specifically for a red mana. If you bargain an artifact, enchantment, or token, you can deal 3 damage instead and scry 1. But the important line is that it exiles the creature, and that it does that whether or not you bargain.
yeah.
And so they take out the
Yeah.
vampire here. I could have sacrificed the squirrel, but with the bargain, it was a 3/3 anyway. It was 3 damage rather, and I had another vampire, so I didn't really need to do that.
Yeah. So that's a surprising thing for me in the format is I'm surprised there's not more exile removal being utilized in the format as a whole. Because whenever I do see it, it just seems so powerful.
Yeah, it certainly is. And here we get to see me go for the blue elemental blast on a Clan Shaman, which I have to do. Like, it feels pretty good, but at the same time, they have an Utrom, a Mirror Enforcer. I have a Shambler here, and I don't know what my other card is in hand. But again, I feel like I have to attack, even though they once again have mana up, and it could easily be a Toxin.
Yeah. It looks like there was a stamina in hand, which is kind of your out. Um,
It is definitely probably the best card to have here. The problem is that if they have a kill spell or like a toxin analysis for the vampire, I can make a bunch of squirrels, but that's about it. And like I attack, he blocks instantly. And so I go for the stamina, but I already know that I have to sacrifice 2 creatures here. So he also very smartly waits till I sacrifice the 2 creatures to go for the toxin. Because if I sacrifice just one, they'll be trading anyway. I go for the second, and he has the toxin analysis. So toxin doesn't even need to be paired with Krark to be really good. I apologize. Go ahead.
no, you're good. It's definitely one of the weaknesses of Blood Throne is that it forces you to go in on something in instances, and if your opponent has open mana, it you can really get blown out pretty often
Yeah.
by clearing out your board and then running into a removal spell.
Yeah, Vampire is the best card in the deck for speed, even though it is one of the only 2 drops in the deck. It's the creature that usually, like, anytime I'm talking about, oh, you can get like a turn 3 win, it's with a vampire because it's all about that speed. Feeder and Beetle are the ones that are much better at grinding a little bit because they can consistently deal however much damage every single turn. It's not hard to deal 10 damage or in the right situation, 15 or 20 every single turn with them. And Vampire's a one-hit wonder. You get one shot at it usually.
Yeah, which again can be a really big shot.
Yeah, I mean, it can be
Oh,
lethal in
oh,
one
didn't
hit.
it?
And it's always the threat of activation, right? If you attack in and they have a 1/1, they block, you sack one thing, and then when they don't block, you sack 13 things.
Right,
But it's just so susceptible to removal, unfortunately.
right. And we saw it in our previous games. I remember at least against Elves it stole a game. I think it steal a game against Slivers too. I think it did.
I think it might have, yeah.
Yep.
It's good at doing that for sure.
Yeah,
But
absolutely. But at this point, you're out of Sauk outlets. You have a land in hand. Your opponent's still going off. Play Krark.
yeah, they
Again,
rub it in with the Krark a little bit. It was not necessary. They already have me dead here. Well, I mean, I could start chump blocking the Mirror Enforcer, so it was necessary to
yeah,
like win that quickly, but like
was
I was dead either way.
yeah. So again, it's hard to kind of lose that matchup. Your opponent drew well. I would say that you probably didn't draw the best. but there was some play, even without drawing the best. There
For
was some
sure.
good
I
play.
I definitely think there was a lot of luck here. Like that opener from them, game one, with all the
Hmm.
flyers was just crazy. The double toxin, even without the Krarks, was crazy in game three. But it's an unfavored matchup at the end of the day. It's not one I was expecting to win, and we did even get to do the blue elemental blast, which was like cool and surprising. But actually, like the game wasn't technically over, which is why I did it. But honestly, all I really ended up doing was showing him that I have blue elemental blasts in the
Yeah.
sideboard. Um, so anyway,
And that all to say, you lose this game, but going 2-3 or 3-2,
yep.
you were one of the lucky few. And I'm a little jealous because I was not one of the lucky few that ends up still sneaking into the top 8 with a 3-2 record, which we'll see in a follow-up video.
Yeah. So 3-2. I ended up sixth in getting into top 8 because my two losses, which was Ruby Storm and Grixis Affinity, were the second and third players in the Swiss. So
Hmm.
my breakers were really good. So I did end up in the top 8. And yes, as you said, this is going to be the end of this video, but we're going to do a follow up with commentary, same style, doing the top 8 because that was a pretty fun top 8 as well.
Yeah, sounds good. All right, see y'all later.
Yeah. Thanks for watching.